Good evening. So we're ready to get started. Add a couple of comments before we actually get into the meeting. Yesterday was President's Day, and commemorating George Washington and also Abraham Lincoln. And since Abraham Lincoln is from Kentucky, I thought I'd read a few quotes from him that I feel pertain to us. We expect some new disaster with each newspaper we read. And of course, this is in the context of the Civil War time period. And another one, we shall sooner have the bird by hatching the egg than by smashing it. And a third one that I thought was interesting, you cannot escape the responsibility of tomorrow by evading it today. So just a few words of wisdom from Abraham Lincoln. Tonight we have myself, Anna Marie Pavlik-Rosen, Board Chair, Vice Chair Walt Baldwin, Secretary-Treasurer Dawn Hale, Member Ralph Ledwig, and our Attorney James Liebman. We are still missing a fifth board member, but we're ready to go ahead. Our first item of business is consider approving prior meeting minutes, or the meeting minutes from January. Okay, good. Has everyone had a chance to read the meeting minutes? Okay. Myself, I had some concerns about them, that there's certain areas that had a lot of data, a lot of items from the Executive Digest, and other areas that had almost no additional comment as to what was discussed or was presented. And I'd like to propose that we form a committee to look into writing of the minutes and what the guidelines might be. And the idea I came up with, which is open to discussion, of course, would be to contact the 3 previous board chairs, or 2 or 3 of them, and ask them to sit down with me to go over and come up with some guidelines for board minutes. Any ideas on that? Ralph, you would be one person I'd want to include on that committee.
I think there's been some discussion of this in the past, kind of briefly, but my understanding is there's 2 approaches to preparation of minutes. One is a very summary type approach, and the other is the more detailed, get everything in there approach. And we did have a more summary or abbreviated method of doing it for some time, and then it changed at some point into the format that's being used now, which is very detailed. So, and I don't know why that change was made. There may have been some concern that just everything should be in the minutes. I think that was probably the rationale. So I don't know if we need to revisit the subject or not.
Well, my concern on these particular minutes were, say, Nate Van Sickle came and gave a brief presentation, but all it says is that he was here and no further comment at all. And other areas had a couple pages of comments or things from the Executive Digest. And I just feel that we need to find a balance.
Well, in the previous month, we put very detailed comments from from the public, and we were given instruction by you to take that out. So it's very hard to know what to do when that happens.
I know. That's why I was thinking committee that would maybe lay some things out would be helpful.
I'm just trying to be consistent with what you ask. So
I think that's a good idea. I think it's a good idea just to get something down on paper that says, what we want for minutes. And
sounds like a great governance policy issue.
Okay. Okay, thank you, David.
I think that Kathy should be on the committee. I mean, it's affecting her day-to-day job. And so maybe both Kathys or at least one of them should be on the committee.
Okay.
Since it is their job.
So board chairs and either Kathy Poe or Kathy Jennings is what you're proposing?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. James, would this be something we need to vote on, or just as
if you're going to establish a committee, I would try to be as clear as possible and who the members would be.
Okay. I'll make a motion then that I will establish a committee with. I'm not sure. I haven't talked to the former board chairs if they want to be on that committee, but I'll contact them, ask them, and then also include either Kathy Poe or Kathy Jennings on that committee.
Let me just get that. Do you want me to Katrina, do you know how to do this?
The easiest thing would be just go ahead and jot it down for now.
Okay.
And we can put it in tomorrow.
All right. So you want to,
I would suggest that you add to the motion, for your consideration, of course, that whatever this committee comes up with would be put in writing and submitted to the board for
Oh, okay.
approval or
Thank you.
comment, et cetera.
Right. So, and our goal would be to make an outline of what those parameters would be for the meeting minutes and bring them to the board for approval. Okay. So
Is that a motion then?
that is a motion.
Okay, I'll second it.
Dawn seconded. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
So everyone's in favor. Great, thank you. So as far as these minutes, I would apply our new logic to the meeting minutes from January, that members can look at the video, discuss the guidelines, and then work on the meeting minutes for January.
So then you're suggesting they not be approved tonight?
I am. We can vote on that if you'd like. But
Aren't minutes supposed to be approved in the next meeting?
I think what the KRS says is they're to be presented at the next meeting.
Or available, maybe.
Yeah, but I don't think it says that they have to be approved. I mean, that would be implied, and we're trying towards that. James, did you have anything to add on that?
I don't have that one memorized.
Okay.
I think it says available, but I couldn't swear to it before the next regular meeting, which of course is tonight.
So do you think there's any problem with waiting till we're finished with the recommendations from the minutes committee to modify these and approve them?
If you can do it within that time frame,
You mean by the next meeting?
I wouldn't push it too far down the road.
Okay.
But
Right.
these are available. They're in print. So is the motion to just table it, or?
Well, we were talking
sure I
about whether
understand.
we needed a motion to work on the existing minutes as our first assignment of the committee.
I would make a separate motion just that these be tabled, but they're available if anybody wants to review them.
Okay. I'll go ahead and make that motion. I move that these minutes, the January 2018 minutes, be tabled and that we vote on them at the next meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And the motion passed. Okay, on to our next item. Discuss the implementation of the new board software, eMeetings.
Let's get
Oh, I'm sorry. I did that last time too, didn't I? I'm sorry. Katrina, please go ahead with the financials for January 2018.
Good evening. If you'll start on page 28, if you have the printed out version of the board package, you'll see the statement of net position as of January 31st. Line 60 shows total assets of $174 million. Line 115. Oh yeah, we're going to try to follow this. Line 115 shows total liabilities of $88 million. Line 150, total net position of $86 million. And then line 155 is total liabilities in that position of $174. The next page is the cash investment schedule, and this is required for our investment policy. It just shows the breakout between restricted and unrestricted cash and restricted and unrestricted investments. The top section shows the cash. Line 50 is restricted cash of $782,000, and then line 95 is unrestricted cash of $22 million. Total restricted and unrestricted cash as of January 31st of just under $23 million. Then the bottom section shows the investments. Line 135 is the restricted investments of $9.3 million. Line 145 is unrestricted investments of $118,000. Total restricted and unrestricted investments on line 150 is $9.4 million. The next schedule just shows a summary of our bonds, leases, and loans payable. The balance as of January 31st is $43.5 million, and the amount due in the next year is just over $5 million. The next page is our statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position. It's for the entire company. It's a summary statement. Line 20 shows the total operating revenues year-to-date of just over 60 million. Line 50 is total operating expenses year-to-date of just under 43 million. And shows our gross contribution on line 55 year-to-date of a little over 17 million. Line 140 is the G&A section. And that shows total year-to-date of 13 million, just a little over 13 million. Line 190 shows total other revenue year-to-date of 1.9 million. 195 shows the bottom line, basically net contribution of just over 6 million through 7 months. The next statement is the exact same data, just in a more detailed version. And then pages 33 to 46, again, it's the same data, just sliced and diced a little bit differently. It shows each separate division and department. Kathy, I'm going to go to page 47 in the board package. I don't know. It's the cash activity summary. Keep going through all the ones that look like this. You got about 8 more. The cash activity summary that she's going to is just a list of all of our bank accounts, and it shows the beginning balance from last month and then all the summary level transactions of all the activity that happened in each account. There you go. And then ties to the ending balance as of the end of the month of January 31st. And then all of the disbursements are broken down in detail, so there's complete transparency. Line 50 shows a detail of the distributions that were made by EFT, electronic funds transfer. Is that in there, Kathy? Go about 2 more pages.
No, this is the last.
Okay. I think because maybe some of that's redacted. Okay. But anyway, it's the detail of all the electronic funds transfer. And then pages 51 to 87 is the detail of every check that was written out of the accounts payable or the O&M fund. And then 88 through 91 is the detail of every check that was written out of our interest fund. Y'all have any questions?
Looks good. Thank you, Katrina.
Vote to accept.
Oh,
Motion to accept.
yes. Is there a motion to accept the?
So moved.
Thank you.
A second.
Oh, okay, so motion made by Walt and seconded by Dawn to accept the financials.
You take a vote.
Oh, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next item, to discuss the implementation of the new board software, eMeetings.
We talked about this the other day, but some of you all weren't present. In September this past year, IT began looking for ways to decrease the cost and increase the quality of the software we use to put board packages together. At that time, FPB staff was invited to review 3 different software packages. The 3 that we considered were Passageways at an annual cost of $10,125 for the initial install the first year, and then $7,200 thereafter. Board pack was $35.88 the first year and $28.80 per year after the initial first year, and finally eMeetings, which was $3,000 the first year and only $1,000 each year after the initial setup and training. After the 3 companies demonstrated their products, we decided that in order to keep costs to a minimum and still get the best quality product, we would go with eMeetings. We currently pay Diligent $12,750. You will find 3 quotes along with the latest invoice from Diligent in the detail section of your board packets. The product is web-based, so as long as you have your sign-on information, you can access the portal on any device. The last 3 years of board packets and approved minutes have been uploaded to the portal, so you can do your research through the keyword searches. and pull up information on the portal that you were not able to access through Diligent. This program imports information and builds your minutes after each meeting and is able to project documents onto a screen so people attending the meetings or watching on television can follow along with the meeting as long as the information isn't confidential in nature. This feature was actually requested via website customer comments in September. Each member can click their computer or iPad to an autopilot mode and can easily follow along with the meeting without having to do that themselves, giving them the ability to take notes, etc. during the meeting. I have today with me Katrina Kinman. She is from KSBA, and she is here to walk you through the eMeeting software and to demonstrate how easy it is to use.
Thank you, Kathy. I'm Katrina Kinman. I'm Director of the Policy Services at the Kentucky School Boards Association. So you're probably thinking, what does KSBA have to do with a municipal utility? Well, back in 2004, technology staff at KSBA created the eMeeting software. At that time, I worked for Franklin County Schools, and we've served as one of the pilot districts to help KSBA develop the program. So it's been around for a long time. As Kathy said, it is a cloud-based web application that board members can access anywhere they have internet access. It also has an offline agenda feature, so if you know you're going to be somewhere without the internet, once that meeting's published and ready to go, all the materials are there for the board. Excuse me. We currently have 105 Kentucky school districts that use our product, 32 SBDM councils, and we have 10 outside agencies that also utilize eMeeting: the Kentucky High School Athletic Association, Kentucky Board of Education. We have several city commissions, one fiscal court, and several other municipal utilities. So it's a product that is very easy to use. It is such a time saver for that person that has to put the board agenda and materials together. They can create a template, and then each time, when you have regular items that are on the meeting agenda, just say create a meeting from the template. It populates those and it makes that information available. And then once the materials are ready, they can notify the board. You can log in with your credentials and take a look at it. So I want to show you real quick, Kathy, if you'll close this out and go back one item to where you approved the financials. So she's already had the recommended motion is a fragment of a sentence that's completed by the action taken by the board. And so once you make who made the motion and who made the second, it automatically starts populating those minutes and then shows how each member voted, which is required by law. Also, say if you have a public comments portion and there were no public comments, you could go in and under the discussion tab just put there were no public comments. So it's very easy to use. By the end of the night tonight, the unofficial minutes are already ready to be reviewed and looked at. You can take attendance, which she did at the beginning of the meeting. And then each time as you go down to an action items, it shows how each member voted. If someone had to leave during a meeting, she could reflect and update the attendance and note what time that board member had to leave the meeting. So that it's just a very brief overview of how quickly the minutes can be put together at the end of the meeting, and I'll entertain any questions that you have.
I had one question. On the handout that we have in our book, it says key meeting features, information on open meetings, open records. How is that interacted?
Kathy, if you will close out that document and go up to, let's see, where do I need to go? Policy. And click there. I'm sorry. No, y'all don't subscribe to the policy service. Excuse me. Go to, no, because you don't subscribe to that either. Our member districts do. We have links within here. Go to services. I'm sorry, eMeeting, go to eMeeting. There we go. We have links to the KAR and the KRS, so if you're in a meeting and it goes directly to the Kentucky Legislative webpage, and if you want to know what a particular statute says, you just click on it and it takes you right to that. Same way with the Kentucky Administrative regulations, and then also too with Attorney General opinions, open records decisions, open meeting decisions. Those are all linked in the program itself.
I see. Okay.
Which is specifically good for us because this is Kentucky-based. You all are here.
That's correct.
The Diligent software is not,
Yeah.
so that's
We're
a
5
key
minutes
thing
up the
for it.
road, right up the road here, located here in Frankfort. We have 24/7 support for the program as well. During the day, if someone has a question, they can just send us an email. But we take turns, my staff, the policy staff are also our e-meeting trainers. We take turns being on call. So for instance, my staff was at the car dealership yesterday buying a new vehicle and got a call from a principal in Lincoln County, and she was able to assist him while he was putting his board packet together. So we're here, we're your neighbors. We do provide assistance with e-meeting. As I said, it kind of speaks for itself. The number of school districts, there's 173, 105 of them use our product. So we also, provide training. So when we do train the staff to put it together, Kathy's already doing a great job just from the demonstration of how to take action, take attendance, and then we provide assistance with that. Once at the end of the night, so if you go up to tools, reports, minutes, and the board members can also do that. Now, she has more bells and whistles being the meeting manager, but the board member at the end of the night after your meeting, you could go and then open the meeting minutes down there at the bottom, and then it shows you what time the meeting started, any discussion that you choose to include in there, the recommended motion, how each member voted, so on and so forth.
So this basically really is creating the minutes here, right?
Yes, sir.
So how does this relate to what we just did? I mean, we just said we're going to have this committee that's going to study how to do minutes. And
Well, I think the part that we need to discuss is how much of the discussion goes in. The actual motion, that's pretty clear. I think everyone agrees with that. And
I'm still confused. And it seems to me we're making Kathy's job unnecessarily difficult. I mean, she's created many pages of minutes for us in our packet tonight. Looks to me to be complete. Now we're saying we're going to go back and look at how we do minutes, and she's just explained to us that we've got something in front of us now that will enable us to create the minutes.
right, it does do that. I think the question that came up in our existing January minutes is there large sections that are copied from the Executive Digest that don't really fit into the discussions that we had. I mean, it's information that's in another area that isn't part of what happened in the meeting directly.
I don't know, I'm confused. I think we're creating problems instead of eliminating them.
I think having a tool to create the minutes is different than, the content that's inside the minutes themselves, and what at the end of the day, the minutes are the voice of the board, and it's how we speak towards our actions and what happened. And the tool we use to do that is detached from the actual content and the way that we define them. And there's David,
it has to be practical. Whatever we do, it has to be practical.
Oh, I agree. Yeah.
And she's presenting us with something that's very practical, appears to me, and we're trying to make progress on all this. And I think we should try this before we get a committee to start turning things up.
Well, I think there are two different discussions there. One is how to get the motions down and have the outline of the meeting, and that this would be a tool to do that. But the actual portion where you're discussing what was, you're condensing down what was discussed, and it's not word for word, but it's just the gist of it, that's a separate thing that happens with a little thought later, I think.
Okay, well,
We were in a training session with Ms. Kinman and Mr. Thurman, and they said that, generally discussion is not included in the minutes. They pointed out that, maybe a year down the road, the discussion could become an issue where people disagree that it was actually said, we have a tool in-house. We're being videotaped as we speak, so that is the voice of the board really in the day and age we live in. So, I mean, not that I don't want to do as you know, we'll do the minutes however you ask, but I think the idea, and I've watched training videos, is that minutes should just be actions and kind of general, like, summaries of what happened, so that you don't have one person's opinion in there and then the other person's maybe didn't make it into the minutes. I mean, but.
I think Ralph has brought up a good point, though. We've got this tool. Why don't we do it for 3 months or set a magic date and see how this works? And if we still have issues, then we can always do a committee then. It's just sort of contradictory, I think, maybe to do it now.
Well, I think there are two different discussions there, though. One is the tool to set up the outline, and the other is the content. And the committee is going to talk about the content.
I don't think we should have a tool that dictates how we do our work. You know, the tool is, it kind of gets you to that, you know, if the only tool you have is a hammer and everything's a nail, you know, I think we should define what we're actually trying to do with the minutes and figure out, you know, how that works with this tool, if that's appropriate.
But isn't that subjective in a way anyway? I mean, what Kathy just said is basically discussion would be kept to a bare minimum. It would be just a summary. And so if that's the case, then I don't really see where what's being included in the minutes becomes an issue if it's just a summary of discussion.
Well, and that's what we haven't outlined. I know the county does absolutely no mention of the discussion. It's just the motion and how people voted, and that's it. I believe that's the approach that KyMEA has taken. The city has a little bit more discussion in there, and we traditionally have had some discussion in there, which I think is valuable because it reminds people of what the context of it was. And yes, you can go back to the video, but that's not a condensed version, and it's not what the KRS says that we should be able to do, that we should be able to go back to our document, which is the meeting minutes.
But to me, what is subjective is what is discussion. And so someone is still going to have to make that judgment.
Right, and that's where the committee will set some guidelines, which we'll be bringing back to the board to agree with or not agree with.
I think it's complicating it too much. I'm sorry, ma'am.
Okay.
One other thing
Go ahead.
I wanted.
I interrupted you.
Oh, no, you're fine. One other thing I wanted to show you, Kathy, if you could close that out, is you're going through and looking at attachments, which will show up on the upper right-hand corner there, or also above, it'll have the number of attachments for each individual item. But there's also a notes feature, which is unique to each individual's login. So you can't see another board member's notes. They're specific to you. So if you're reviewing the agenda and you have a question, or you want to remind yourself to ask about something or to make a comment about something, you can just type in hello in there. And then save that. That is, as I said, unique to each user's login. So then when you get into the meeting, if you're using a device to follow along during the meeting, then your note will appear there when you get to that item to remind you. It's just like your own personal paper sticky note, but unique to your login, and others can't see that.
Yeah. I had a little bit of a problem in trying to do that at home. It came up just exactly what yours did a minute ago. When I just typed in gibberish, and so then it showed me that I had a note. But when I clicked on the note, I mean, can you do that again,
Yes,
Kathy? And I clicked save, and so then it makes it. So then when I clicked on it, it just gave me that. Are you sure you want to delete?
If you see, there's a little red X, that's to delete it. There's a little yellow pencil if you wanted to edit it. And so that's your option. Or if you wanted to add more to the note, you just click on the one that has the little pencil, and then you can add more information.
I guess I was touching the wrong little part there.
Another nice feature that is included in this summary is our Autopilot feature. So while the chair or Kathy or who's leading the meeting can be leading, and then if the board member has a checkbox under Autopilot as you navigate through the agenda, it brings you to that same item. Now, if you wanted to look at something else and click off of it, then all you have to do is click Autopilot, and it brings you right back to where everyone else is on the agenda, too. Any other questions?
I just have a comment.
Yes, ma'am.
I used it for this, and I thought it was really easy. It was
Thank
a piece
you.
of cake.
There was a question, I think, about security.
Yes, it is housed by Rackspace, which is cloud-based.
Oh.
So it's not a server in our building that if something happened that we would have to try to recreate. It's all cloud-based with Rackspace. They have 24/7 support. If something should happen with the cloud, per se, they guarantee a 1-hour restoration. I will tell you that our uptime rate is 99.9%, and that includes scheduled maintenance. So if we're going to be down, any upgrades to the system we do, like on the weekend, after midnight, that type of thing, when folks aren't typically looking at their board packets. So yes, we have that.
What about actually intrusion? Do you have a history of any intrusion issues, or
No, we do not. Knock on wood.
are there audit processes you go through to validate that resiliency?
That's all what
or-
our IT folks would do that. I'm not in IT.
I see.
So, but I can tell you that with Rackspace, we have that security level that they guarantee.
But not on your
and we've
application
never
in
had any
particular.
issues.
I see. But do you have similar processes in place that are for your application in particular, or just the generic security auditing that Rackspace does?
Our IT folks monitor all the time anything that's going through our building. So I don't know what their specific steps are, but yes, we do that.
I guess I had one more question, but
Sure.
it's probably not your question. It was more around the process and the selection process. And unless anybody else has any other questions, I don't have to. We don't have to keep you up there. for
Okay, thank you.
So can whoever actually, I'm not sure whether that was IT or Kathy, what the selection process go like? Can you give me some insight into how the requirements were defined, how you pulled in stakeholder input, how how you ended up coming up with these three to select from, and how that?
Well, I was not involved in that process. Our IT department was.
Oh, it's okay.
We were contacted. Ryan, do you want to address that? Okay, great.
Well, I don't mean to catch you off guard. If you'd rather pull something together and send it to us, that's fine.
I'm sure Ryan has
as far
a
as
pretty good idea.
Ryan Henry, Assistant IT Director. As far as the product itself, I mean, IT doesn't really use it, but basically our stance on it was more on the financial savings side of it. I mean, obviously, we picked a few products that mirrored kind of what we did today, right? So we kind of looked at, okay, what's out there in the field? What are other people using? This one obviously stood out first on the financial side of it, the savings that are potentially there and where we can go with it. A couple of things were presented and for the Cathys to kind of look at, and we all kind of looked at them that way. There were some IT staff involved. I wasn't personally, but we can go back and review any of it that you'd like. I mean, it's by no means set in stone. This was just the tool that seemed like it fit the best in. The savings involved obviously were a pretty big factor.
I guess that was my question: is what was that fit? Did we go through a requirements gathering process, and did we define the feature function we're looking at, or how did we?
Yes.
Yeah, and I guess
we
that's what I was
actually
asking.
test drove all three, just like what you all have been through sort of today, only we were able to drive each one. And we found that this one was the easiest to use, easiest to understand. I mean, I've had 20 minutes of training, and I've been able to navigate and talk to you all about it and things like that. So, and I really was opposed to leaving Diligent because I had just learned it. So I was a little bit upset about it. But thankfully, this process made it very easy to understand where we were going, what our goal was, And I think we've been able to accomplish all that with this program.
Well, if somebody could get me a list of whatever our, requirements process was and what we picked out as our features and that type of thing.
I think that's attached here in the eMeetings attachment. I don't know if
Oh, was it not in the board book and then something else?
it should be there.
didn't see any
All the
requirements
information
stuff.
that we went through, I don't know.
You sent that in an email, too.
Well, maybe it's
The
just not in the board book.
process.
I'm not really asking about the procurement process as much as, I'm sure you understand what I'm saying, is how do we go through that requirements process? How do we define what we're looking for
Right.
before we even selected those three,
So
that type
would
of
it-
thing?
would it
What do we
just-
identify as our top feature function? What were we looking for?
Oh, I
that
don't
type
Would
of
it be something on the lines of features we could identify the old product had that we were looking for in a new product? Is that what
Exactly,
you're
and
asking?
what we thought was important and what we were trying to accomplish. I guess to blow it out past.
Just to compare
what we
apples
wanted.
to apples.
Yeah, so we
Sure.
could blow it out past, just so it's cheaper. What were
Oh,
we
yeah,
actually
yeah,
trying to solve?
absolutely.
is
Well,
kind of
one
what I'm
thing
trying
that we
get
did
to.
want to do was, you remember we got the comment in September that someone wanted us to be able to project this.
Sure.
That was what was great about this one. We were like, okay, well, because we were all trying to kind of figure out how we were going to accommodate that. We would have had to, use like PowerPoint. And so we would have been, making diligent and then going in PowerPoint doing presentations that we could actually present. But this actually allows us to, as we are putting things into the system, it lets us say this is public consumable and it's actually able to be put on the screen. So like when you saw Katrina's presentation, she sent me, okay, I can let this be out there for everybody to see. And so as I'm up there, we'll go through the pages. And as we learn and how to do this, that's one of the biggest things that we were pleased with about this product. So.
But so I think we're on the same page and you can, yeah, cool. Thanks.
Okay. So, let's see. So we've had presentation discussion on that. It sounds like we have a 3-month trial period with the software. Did I pick that up incorrectly somewhere?
I'm not sure that that's been something that we talked about, I think.
Yeah, I think the board needs to make a decision on how you'd like to go forward. I think we're indigent for the rest of this fiscal year or calendar year, is my understanding.
Oh, we are.
Yeah, but, so the board needs to make a decision if you want to be involved in the selection process. Maybe you can,
So we're diligent for the rest of this calendar year.
yes,
You mean through December?
yes.
Oh,
Okay.
Oh, calendar, not budget. Oh, okay.
Commitments in the fiscal year, right, so, but the actual, they will provide the product until the December, so.
I see.
Yeah, the commitment's there, and so we have the ability, obviously, to stay course in that. I don't think it'd be the preference of anybody taking the minutes today, but it's your all's choice, all right?
okay.
So it sounds like we're kind of in a holding pattern. You'd like more information
so,
on the,
yeah.
okay, all right.
Okay. So we'll revisit that at a later meeting. Okay. Public comment period. I know John Higginbotham is here and mentioned he wanted to make a presentation. And I'm not sure if anyone else has signed up as public comment.
How's everybody doing today? This
Good.
feels weird. Thanks again for the opportunity to talk this evening. My comments here tonight are to publicly acknowledge exceptional work and to give sincere thanks to 2 recent retirees in the cable telecom department. Kevin Johnson returned to Frankfort after honorably serving his country in the United States Marine Corps. Soon thereafter, Kevin began work at the FPB in June 25, 1990. And as Kevin learned his trade as an installer and gained experience, he was promoted to senior installer a few years later. And another opening occurred, and Kevin was promoted to installation supervisor in 1998. Now, at the time of Kevin's retirement in December 1st, 2017, I believe this is true, and Diane might check me on this, but I think he was the longest-serving supervisor at FPB, just shy of 20 years of service in that one particular role. Dana Goodlett also honorably served his country, returning home to Kentucky after completing his service in the United States Navy. Dana was hired by FPB as a construction line worker, beginning here at FPB on March 18, 1991. Dana was promoted to construction supervisor in 1998 and applied for and was selected in an entirely new role as installation and order processing manager in 2004. Dana retired from the FPB on January 1st, 2018. Just a quick history lesson to put this in context. Community Service Incorporated began cable TV service in October 1952 and ceased to exist in 1988 after more than 36 years of providing cable TV service to Frankfort and Franklin County. Those community cable employees and infrastructure were transferred to FPB, and the cable department as we know it today was born. In 1990, Mr. Howard Norrell sold Consolidate Cable TV to FPB, and in 1991, those two companies serving different parts of this community came together as one. The two systems had different channel lineups, lots of incompatible equipment, issues, and different monthly rates depending on what part of town you lived in. And there are a lot of problems. At a time when in the early 90s when cable TV industry was really exploding with the number of new channels that could be offered to customers. It wasn't long before the FPB directors decided to rebuild these two networks and to offer more channels and better service and potentially add new services like telephone and internet access and that type of thing. Kevin and Dana's career spanned this entire period between 1990 through today. They've been involved with the consolidation of the cable systems. They worked hard to reinvent the fiber-dependent full-service network cable telecom infrastructure, training staff in new technologies and service offerings, and all the while completing their most important task, which is, of course, serving the customer. These guys have overseen the installation of every single set-top, every DTA, every MTA, and the majority of the cable modems in Frankfort. And they've done their very best in making their customers happy. These two retirees, in my opinion, would tell you that the employees did the work. And they were just the supervisors making sure that the work was getting done. And that's true. But without great leadership, primarily focused on serving the customer, the department could not have achieved the success that it has. And without Kevin and Dana and their service to FPB. It's hard sometimes to focus on the job and ignore comments about employees not caring about customers or rates being too high and the cable modem speeds too low, or dysfunction at FPB means changes are needed. What I can tell you with absolute conviction is that the community need look no further than these two employees to understand no one cared more about their customers, their coworkers, or this institution than Kevin Johnson and Dana Goodlett. They leave big shoes to fill, but I know there are folks right here in this room ready and able to fill those shoes. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Dana, for a job well done. We appreciate your dedication to this community. Good luck in your new adventure. You're going to like it. And Ms. Rosen, thank you for the time.
Okay, thank you, John. Nice. Nice. Thank you to those employees. Thank you, John. Are there any other people who would like to make a public comment? Amy, please go ahead. So, Amy Benson Haver.
Thanks, yes. My name is Amy Benson Haver, and I've kind of hastily prepared some comments tonight. I wanted to mention with regard to the earlier discussion of the committee, whatever the prerogative is of this body, just be aware that that committee is a public agency and needs to conduct its meetings publicly. And as well, the open meetings law does address the content of what has to exist in the minutes to satisfy that statute, and that is an accurate record of votes and actions taken. So it's a very minimal requirement. Anything over and above that is sort of icing on the cake.
Oh, Amy, thank you. And I had one question on that. Do you have to record how everyone voted? Is that part of the rule?
I think that the way the statute doesn't specifically address, it says an accurate record of votes and actions taken as it's been construed through the years. Essentially, if it's a unanimous vote, it's sufficient that it reflect a unanimous vote. But if there are any dissenting votes, you would need to indicate how each member voted.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's just Attorney General's interpretation of the law. Yeah. So, okay, once again, I am just here as an advocate for transparency. There's been so much discussion about kind of on both sides of the issue about the value of making public any record relating to the matters currently before this board. And I would like to just point out there is ample authority on these issues. When I spoke about this issue at the City Commission, I always feel a little awkward quoting the language of the preamble to the statute because it sort of sounds like this high-flown rhetoric. But essentially, all transparency laws, all sunshine laws in the United States are sort of premised on the same basic idea that and I'm going to repeat it, the people in delegating authority do not give their public servants the right to decide what is good for them to know. The people insist on remaining informed so they may retain control over the instruments they created. This is this overarching principle that informs Kentucky's open records and open meetings laws. These laws were enacted in the wake of the traumatic events of the 70s, Watergate, the Vietnam War, when there was a real sense of the importance of the public's right to know. And as the years have gone by, we've become a little more jaded about those concepts. But never in the history of this country has it been more important in the current federal, state, and local climate to have these laws as robustly enforced as possible. The law relating to open meeting is premised on this notion that the formation of public policy is public business. We need to know what goes into the considerations that inform that policy, not just what that policy is. The underlying rationale of the open records law is that free and open examination of public records is in the public interest, and in both cases, the law dictates that the exemptions that exist in the law have to be strictly construed. We can't give them sort of broad in construction. We have to look at them and ensure that any record withheld clearly falls within the parameters. In the early days of the open meetings and open records law, when there was very little to guide my predecessors in the AG's office in interpreting these laws, one of the earliest authors of opinions wrote that the exemptions are a shield and not a shackle. The exemptions are convenient shields which public officials may use when they desire to do so, not restraints to keep them from opening up records in their custody. An official does not have to be concerned with whether a record should be released or not, but only concerned with whether he may justifiably withhold a record from public examination. And in 2013, the Kentucky Supreme Court came to that same conclusion in a case called Lawson versus Office of the Attorney General, declaring that the General Assembly, in enacting the exemptions, did not intend to mandate an iron rule of non-disclosure whenever an exemption applies. The court said that such an iron rule of non-disclosure runs counter to the principle fundamental in our law that rights, even fundamental rights, may be waived. So we have this very clear line of authority in both the courts and in the Attorney General's office, recognizing that the exemptions to the open records and open meetings law are discretionary. They are not mandatory. It is also important to note that when you're invoking the attorney-client privilege, which seems to be where the focus is on the particular records that are in dispute with regard to this agency, or seem to be in dispute with regard to this agency, you have to be able to establish 3 elements. The Kentucky Rule of Evidence 503 states that you have to be able to show the relationship of attorney-client, communication by or to the client relating to the subject matter upon which professional advice is sought, and the confidentiality of the expression for which the protection is claimed. In the denial of the State Journal's open records request, there was a reference to the statute. There was no attempt made to really verify that each of those elements had been established. There is in Kentucky a learned University of Kentucky professor who's considered the expert on evidence law in Kentucky, and he has stated in his treatise Kentucky Evidence Law Handbook, which is the Bible for practitioners in Kentucky, that the attorney-client privilege must be strictly construed and given no greater application than is necessary to further its objectives. And again, those objectives are narrow. They're to protect the litigation strategy and policy, not to generally shield from public access information concerning public issues. And with regard to closed session discussions of attorney-client protected information, 2012 opinion of the Kentucky Supreme Court directly addressing that issue, Carter v. Smith, court says, under the litigation exception, a public agency may enter closed session for discussions of proposed or pending litigation against or on behalf of the public agency. This exception covers discussions of strategy, tactics, possible settlement, and other matters pertaining to the case. Though the exception may be invoked when litigation is not currently pending, but is only threatened or proposed, it does not apply anytime the public agency has its attorney present or where the possibility of litigation is remote or unsubstantiated. The threat or proposition of litigation must be substantial to trigger the exception. There must be a direct suggestion of litigation conditioned on the occurrence or non-occurrence of a specific event. I actually am here to, as director of the Bluegrass Institute Center for Open Government, as well as an attorney with 25 years of investment in these laws, to endorse the position taken by the State Journal in its recent editorial addressing this matter. In the final analysis, this board cannot discuss the report in closed session, and to the extent that there are members, anyone who seems to have a reluctance to discuss it publicly, this will render the report, regardless of how much it cost and who absorbed the cost, a pretty worthless document. So I therefore urge the Board of Directors to remember, in the words of Kentucky's own Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis, that sunlight is the best disinfectant. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Does anyone else have a public comment? John Sauer?
Madam Chairman, members of the board, my name is John Sauer. I live at 112 Wilkinson Street. I'm a Frankfort Plant Board customer, both in electricity, water, telephone, internet, and most recently, security. And I must say, the security fellows who did the job, last month, I guess, did an excellent job. Absolutely superb. I've had Vivint before. They are less expensive and better than Vivint. I have had ADT before. They are better and less expensive than ADT. So I want that on the record. It's a wonderful experience. A couple of issues that I wanted to bring for you today is Reed Smith. Just for clarification from my point of view, I believe the board received a copy draft of the Reed Smith report at your last meeting in January. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. Is there a final report that is going to be forthcoming? And if so, do we have any idea when that might be?
Mr. Sauer, this is your public comment.
Sure.
This is not question and answer.
Usually in the city commission, when we have public comment, we're allowed to, but I understand you may be protecting your client base. But if that's not allowable, that's fine. The other question I did have was on the Southeast Power Administration. There was some discussion, again, at the last meeting. I didn't know if there was anything new as far as deadlines or when we might be able to join them. I do remember, as a point of fact, that I believe it was going to save the plant board $500,000 if we were able to join that, and I knew that time was running short. Is there an update on that?
It's up to the board. If anybody wants to respond, I don't have, that information is not within my expertise.
That's on the subject of integration of our capacity and energy, our SEPA capacity and energy into KyMEA.
Right.
We're under, KyMEA has given us basically a deadline to, I think it's April 1 to, to signify our consent to doing that. It's not on the agenda this evening. There is to be something in the regular course of events on SEPA tonight, but it's not on agenda tonight. It may be on next month. I don't know what to do with it. But that's where
next
we are.
month would be our last chance.
To my knowledge, that's where we are.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Anyone else have a public comment? Okay. That closes the public comment section. We'll head on to departmental reports. Website customer comments be the first item.
We just had the one that we had last week, or that we talked about last week. We followed up with the customer. The customer is content.
Okay.
Everything's fine.
So that was a telecom installation question
Yes.
problem. Okay, and that's been taken care Okay, cable department.
Yes, please turn to the cable section of your board packet, electronic copy, whatever it is. The first part of the report is basically our customer penetration numbers. We're still a little behind on broadband and VOD for the month, but everything looks pretty good. So, don't know if you have any questions there. The next page goes into trouble call, which we are down a little bit versus last year. In total number, we have a couple areas there that were up, and it's not FPB related and raise and lower transmit. And I think some of that has to do with the outages we had that are on the outage report. So if you want to go to the outage report, we'll talk about that for a minute. Basically, we had quite a few outages based on the first part of January. That's when we had a pretty good code snap. We lost a lot of amplifiers, and a lot of times people call in and we have the system restored, so when we call back, there was never a problem encountered. And then the other part is when the equipment gets coded, it don't run linear, and so they have to raise and lower the transmit on the equipment at the customer's premise, and so I think that's why that number is a little higher.
So though you're saying, I think those are mainly weather-related?
Yes.
And is there anything we can do for further weather problems?
Replace the equipment, and that's what we plan on doing. That has to do with the active replacement that we talked about, I guess it was October.
Okay.
And the equipment, just when it gets zero, the equipment just can't manage to stay linear through the system, so it shuts down, and we have to go out and replace, or like on some of these where you get the raise and lower transmit, they were basically, we can make an adjustment at the customer's house. It hadn't went completely out. So I think that's why that number's a little higher, was because of the temperature.
Okay, thank
Do you
you.
have any questions?
That's good. Okay, and our next item is customer service.
Good evening, everyone. The customer service reports are on pages 106 to 108 of your board packet. And these statistics show you the new accounts we added, the call count answered by service and billing, as well as CMS, which was a question the board had last month. So we've added that information, as well as average wait times for those calls. And then on the next page is the customer count for both service and billing reps in the office. They assisted 1,896 customers in the office. And the last one is our drive-through customer count, which is something we continue to track because it's a new feature that we have.
On the drive-through portion, can people, they can just pay bills if they want to negotiate something about service or have other questions they need to come in?
Yes, ma'am. The drive-through is strictly for payments.
Okay.
You noted that the CMS times are only after hours. Does CMS do the initial screening for normal time of day, normal working hour calls? Or do those all go directly to our call center?
They all go directly to us. The only thing that goes to CMS is once our offices are closed at 4:30 and on the weekends.
I see. So anybody that calls in, they immediately get an FPB employee here in Frankfort. There's no screening or triage for any of the services that are outside?
That's correct. They go to our ShoreTel interoffice phone system and go directly to a plant board employee.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you all.
Okay. Electric department.
Good afternoon. We got our SAIDI report for the month of January. It was 20.74. My name's Mike Aldridge. I'm with the electric department. Sorry. We have our SAIDI minutes, as I said, then it's 20.74. The national average is 90 minutes, so we're ahead of schedule on that.
Okay, that's good.
Sorry, it's my alarm back there. Some of the things that you can see in the pie chart are the directions for the things that were out, items that were out, equipment damage, some of the unknown issues that just, we couldn't tell what it was. Act of God, I guess. Next page back gives us the different types of outages that we had. We had a total of 13 different types, whether it be from wind or just human error, car accidents, and whatnot. And as a total of our outages, we had 41 customers without power this month, or in the month of January. Most of them were, as you can see, we had several during the ice storm or the snowstorm back in January, or the early part. We had a couple trees that fell and took out large power lines, so we got those back on as soon as we could. Had a couple of cars hit a pole and take out some major three-phase lines. That's all I got. Is there any questions? Thanks.
Sounds good, thank you. Okay. The SEPA report.
Yes. Your SEPA report, you'll see it's a standard. This kind of wraps up the year of 2017 with the information we received. If you go to the next page, Kathy, it kind of gives you the breakdown per month. Scroll on down there. Too much one. There you go. You'll see for December we were at a loss of a little over $11,000, and that brings us to an annual total of a loss of $32,000. If you remember from the budget, we had put in an estimated loss of $125,000 this year for SEPA. So I guess in a bizarre government way, it turned out good. We didn't lose as much money as we thought we were, okay. But by no means is that a good thing. So obviously, other SEPA options with KyMEA I think would definitely be beneficial. But and then if you go to the next page, you see that our running total over the past 20 years, total benefit to the plant board is a little over $10 million, and obviously of the last few years has not been very favorable. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
So do we have information for January, or is that too soon for January?
Not yet. I think okay. Usually the January stuff comes in. I think it came in this afternoon just before the meeting, but I don't have the.
That's fine.
Culled through it yet.
Hoping we're doing better.
I mean, you know, it kind of goes depending on weather and other issues, but I don't think you're going to see anything much different than that, to be honest, coming forward. I think what we projected in the budget was another $125,000 loss. We'll probably make some modifications in this year's budget. It probably won't be set that high. That was a conservative number, but still, I don't think you'll do anything better than break even.
Right. So they're still working on the dams.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So now safety.
We had no OSHA recordables in January. We did have 2 minor vehicle accidents that we look at as no-fault accidents. A customer backed into a plant board vehicle, and then unfortunately a dog was a casualty as ran out in front of a car, or one of our vans, so pretty minor unless you're the dog, I guess. Any questions?
That's good. And I realized we skipped over KyMEA on the list. Is there anything to report there?
I will say the next meeting is in Bowling Green, February 22nd.
Which is Thursday.
Those are public meetings, so anyone that wishes to travel to Bowling Green Municipal Utility, BGMU, could attend that meeting. Also on the website today, if you go to the Frankfort Plant Board's website, go to the services section at the top, go down to electric, and halfway down the electric page is a link to the KyMEA board meetings, and you can go in. It's the agenda for this February 22nd meeting is already up there, so people can see those and all past meetings. Madam Chair, it's your call. We do have another item relating to KyMEA and I have representatives from KyMEA. I don't know if you want to merge them at this time and save them a few hours, or if we can hang on to the end. It's your call.
Okay, that's concerning PURPA?
Yes, ma'am.
Any feel for that? I think it'd be fine to discuss PURPA right now.
Okay.
Yep.
I do have one question while they're coming up to the table. Prevent. I noticed Terry Nolte left OMU. Do you have any feel of how that's going to affect the agency? I mean, he's been kind of a big driver about how that's going.
No, I haven't attended any of the meetings since the summer. I don't know.
Do you have any comments, David? I mean,
the only thing I know is the same thing that everyone read. That's all I know about it.
No, all I know is what's open to the public.
I mean, I guess this is my impression of that, right? I had the impression he was a pretty strong driver around all that. Do we feel like there's going to be a loss of governance there? Do we feel?
I believe KyMEA has a director now, and Mr. Baresh, and the other members involved. I think they'll operate just fine. Obviously, Terry Nolte knew quite a bit of information about power supply, but I don't think it was a one-man organization by any means.
We have with us tonight Doug Burrish. He's the CEO of the Kentucky Municipal Energy Agency, KyMEA. Madam Chair, I'll turn this back over to you as far as in new and old business is consider approval of a resolution to adopt KyMEA Joint PURPA Implementation Plan and authorizing filing of request with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to approve to implement such plan. Doug's here I think he has a presentation on the issue and then is here for any questions that might come. So.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here, Doug.
Thank you. Madam Chair, thank you, and the board, thank you for allowing me to be here tonight. I'm happy to be here. We were here last month as well, so it's great to get back within this short time period. Tonight I want to talk about the PURPA plan. Also, I'll touch a little bit about some of the things we talked about last month, indicative rates. I think that's of interest to people, so we can kind of reinforce that again, and also talk about the SEPA proposal that came up tonight, so we'll just kind of touch base on where those things are at. And very exciting time, I think, for KyMEA and the members. In 14 short months, we're going to be delivering power, and the membership's going to be in charge of their own power supply now, and I think that's what everybody's been striving towards, and very exciting time. So we're happy to be here and talk about that. In terms of what we're going to talk about on the PURPA plan tonight is I'm going to kind of go over PURPA a little bit, make sure everybody's aware of what it is. A lot of acronyms in this industry, so we can kind of maybe give a broad overview and drill into any questions you may have. But we'll start off with talking about the all requirements members and the resources, and then feed into PURPA, because those two things are connected. So what is PURPA? Then what is the KyMEA joint implementation plan for PURPA? And then action steps for you to look at tonight with that resolution that was brought up by David. So first of all, let's talk about the resources. So all requirements members, AR members, are going to get their resources from KyMEA starting May 1 of 2019. And those resources are shown, and obviously they don't flow to one center area, but it's good to illustrate it, to look at it that way. So we have a contract with Dynegy and with Big Rivers Energy, with Paducah Power, with some SEPA hydro for the other all requirements members, with the exception of Frankfort, which is still looking into that, and then the Paris diesels. So this is the resources that flow into our portfolio. So portfolio theory says you have a balance of resources from a number of resources, a number of fuel types, those types of things. That's the resources. The red arrows then flowing out are the all requirements members. So these members will get their 24-hour, 7 days a week type power from our portfolio of resources. So we'll deliver the power to those members. And that's the power that flows out to these red dots. Basically, to kind of sum it up, if you think about it, you say, well, 100% of the power goes out to each of these members, and that idea would be the same type of thing you're delivering, you're getting your power now, 100% of it from Kentucky Utilities. So the same type of idea, 100% of your power comes from KyMEA in the future. And that's how this is set up. And please ask questions now if you'd like. You don't have to wait till the end. So if you see a graphic you want to ask a question about, please feel free. So what's PURPA? PURPA, the Public Utilities Regulatory Policies Act, 1978. It was put into place as Congress's response to the energy crisis. Remember in late 70s we had OPEC and the problems with gas lines, and if you had a license plate, every other day you had to go even and odd to get your gas at some of those long lines. So they wanted to address that, and because it affected the power industry as well. At that point in time, about 16% of the power came from oil-based resources. Right now it's less than 1%, but it was a bigger percentage back then. So when you're oil-based, then you're saying I can't generate power because there's a shortage of oil products. What do we do? So to promote energy efficiency was one response. So they put in PERPA to say, let's promote energy efficiency. Another big thing that affects, and the thing I'm here to talk about today, is a mandate that all electric utilities have to purchase electricity from qualifying facilities, and also known as QFs. So the idea would be if you're a qualifying facility, renewable resources or such, but also it was a lot of co-generators. So I have a process, I'm on the Louisiana Gulf Coast, for instance, let's say, and I have a steam production process that I can generate power off of that as well. That's a co-generator. So I have a steam production, also I can make power. What this law said was you have to buy that power at the avoided cost. So for those of you not familiar with avoided cost, it's simply this. This is the same cost that the utility would have to go out and buy power from another source out into the open market. It would say, well, that's the cost of power. I'll pay the qualifying facility that same amount. Sounds great on paper. There's a lot of problems with that because of the length of the contracts that went along with it. So in California, for instance, they were looking at high-priced oil, locking in qualifying facilities to that price for 20, 30 years. And then when the price of oil dropped, they still had to pay those high prices to the qualifying facility. So the avoided cost is a kind of a tricky calculation. Many people have said it kind of led to the California energy crisis because they had high prices, so they tried to deregulate. So they brought in Enron, and at the same time, when those types of companies came in, it kind of exploded into the bigger problems they had later on. So a beginning of qualifying facilities avoided cost could have caused some of their problems 10 years later, for instance. But that's kind of, in a nutshell, what PERPA did. So PERPA said you need to buy from qualifying facilities, meaning Frankfort. So to address that, in the all requirements contract between KyMEA and all the all requirements members, that was addressed in section 3.B to said, well, what do we do about this issue? So what was agreed to in that contract, the contract that you've, I guess, signed already, is, well, the best way to do it is to have the agency take care of that. So we kind of step into the shoes of all of our members and said, we'll calculate the avoided cost and file that on your behalf. And so that made it a lot easier for you to not have to calculate and have the administrative burden of avoided costs and the paperwork. We'll said, we'll just do it for all of our members. And that's a really good idea, and most joint action agencies have done this same thing, to get a waiver from FERC to say, have the agency do it on our behalf. So this is the language that came right out of that contract, but the idea would be, we're going to step into your shoes and say, we'll take the actions for any qualifying facility that comes along, and I don't believe anybody has any within our membership at all. So it's kind of preemptive to be able to handle that. So what are the advantages of this PERPA implementation plan that we have through KyMEA? Well, first of all, it relieves you of the burden or this obligation to have to buy from the qualifying facilities. There's also another benefit for you, because if you had a qualifying facility, you probably don't have a rate structure in place. Now that they're really selling power to KyMEA, they're just a regular customer for you. And they might have a different rate structure. They might fall right under your industrial rates, for instance. But you're selling them retail electricity for any energy needs they have. We're buying the power from them at the agency level and then taking it back out to our membership. But we're stepping into that process. So it relieves you of that burden of the obligation to buy the PERPA power, and also allows you to sell retail electricity to them. So kind of a win-win for you in that regard. So now let's look at our power supply again. So these are the same resources I talked about before. And if you had a qualifying facility in your town, in your city, then we would say, well, that becomes just another resource for us. So we treat it just like all of our other resources. So it really cleans up the whole issue of a qualifying facility and the PERPA obligation. So the actions for you to take tonight is to adopt the PERPA implementation plan, and this is the plan that we've already spelled out in your contract, and then authorize Spiegel McDermott to go before FERC and get a waiver for you to be waived from that obligation and move it to us. And that's what's in your resolution.
Well, I had a question. How is a qualifying facility identified, or?
Yeah, there's certain rules that they have. So it's up to 80 megawatts, first of all, so there's a kind of a limit. But you have to be a co-generator or renewable resource. So there's someone would come in and have a, did I click that off?
Not related. Okay.
Was that me?
You need to go back to this.
Oh, no, I don't. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody needs to see it or not, but yeah, so there's certain rules about what's a qualifying facility. A co-generator is a classic one. So you have two processes that become very efficient. And so what the government looked at said, well, I have an efficient process where somebody can spin a turbine in addition to another process they have, cogeneration. It looks like, kind of like a combined cycle is today, so I can have two processes. Mm-hmm. And they said that's a very efficient way to generate electricity, and I agree it is. So you'd say, well, let's bring that in as a qualifying facility. Renewable resources were part of this, although it wasn't that big in the late 70s. It's a much bigger issue, of course, now as renewables become cheaper and more of a part of a portfolio. But those are the things that kind of fall into it.
So if someone put together, say, a community solar facility, that under PERPA we'd be required to buy from them?
I believe that's right. I'd have to look under the rules about how community solar fits into that. That's probably the case.
Yeah.
But that's one of those. As it came before us, we'd pull out the rules on PERPA and say, okay, does it fit into this? A lot of times in many of the markets, PERPA has been considered pretty outdated. They say, well, there's markets now, so you could go in and just sell to a market if you wanted to put in that type of facility. We're really not part of a market like a MISO or a PJM, so we're a little different down here, but there is access to those markets through some transmission as well. So we'd probably have to consider how they would qualify or not.
Okay. And the part about waiving something, that's just waiving our requirement to have to fill out the paperwork.
Waiving the requirement that you do the PERPA obligation. The obligation is waived by you and passed to us.
I see.
So you would need to change. You have a PERPA or in your laws right now, or you want to call it your rules. You do address PERPA now, so you're going to need to change that to conform with this, as to be consistent with this.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I had a couple. I think you've answered most of them. There's no QFs for any member right now.
No.
So,
and it's pretty rare. Most of the QFs are on the Gulf Coast, where there's a lot of refineries, and California had quite a few of them, mainly because they were pretty profitable to put a QF in those areas.
So if another member other than us actually had a QF that was going to be handled under PERPA, are there concerns of those costs moving asymmetrically to other members?
No, because it's an avoided cost. So as long as we have the right avoided cost calculation, that's the same cost we buy power from anybody else. But that's a very good question. Imagine you could handle an 80 megawatt load in your area. A lot of the members can't.
Right.
So if somebody came along and said, qualifying facility 80 megawatts, it would, dwarf the town's size. So it makes much more sense to go to the bigger agency that can say it's part of our portfolio.
But then, that's curious. So then does that potentially set up another asymmetric cost structure there if somebody went to someplace like Benton, and then maybe there was an additional transmission construction need there because you had a really large QF?
Yeah, well, so the QF would be responsible for any transmission issues and things like that.
So that wouldn't flow through to the municipal?
That's right, yeah. So there'd have to be the same type of thing you're doing with your SEPA now. There'd have to be a transmission request and a study done by Kentucky Utilities to put that power into that grid, and there's a lot of other issues that go with it. It's one of these things we want to lay out all the things ahead of time before a QF would ever come along to address it, because it's really hard once somebody said, well, here's the rules in place, and we'd say, well, no, it's going to be something different. we're trying to get, I guess I'll say, ducks in a row here, basically, to said, this is what we agreed to in the all requirements contract. Now we're going with the resolution to each of our members, and you're the third one we've been to said, okay, we need to get this all straightened out before power starts flowing 14 months from now. So it's
Then if in the event somebody actually built a QF, I assume if it was solar, there could potentially be RECs associated with that?
You know, I'm not sure if RECs were ever considered at any of this time. You know, it's that kind of PERPA back in 1978 predates all that. So I'd have to have the legal team, we'd have to dig into all those issues. I think the RECs would just belong with the QF, and that's not part of any, you wouldn't have to buy them.
You don't think those would pass through?
I don't think you would have to buy those from the QF. I think those belong to them. The only thing I've ever seen addressed in PERPA is the value of capacity and energy. And anytime anybody's ever filed avoided costs publicly and the avoided cost calculations, all I've ever seen is capacity and energy. So I think that's probably.
So because we're buying the power, the REC wouldn't necessarily flow through with the power?
So you're getting the power, but the RECs would belong with renewable energy credits, if everybody didn't know what those were. So renewable energy credits they're a commodity. In some states, they're not worth anything. Some they're worth more, and they can go across state lines and so forth. Here, I don't think there's any REC requirement anyway, so there's probably no value at all to a REC. But
can't we sell them outside of our state, though?
It's very difficult. Yeah, there's if you go to PJM, for instance, they might say, well, you can, if you're in Ohio, you can buy a Pennsylvania REC, but only Pennsylvania. If you're in New Jersey, they said, okay, it can be a PJM, but it can only be from a certain other state, but only a certain percentage. So there's different classes of RECs as well. So the REC market is very fragmented, and it's kind of fluid. The way it keeps changing is different states say, well, we're trying to encourage local solar facilities in our state, so we don't want to let it come across state lines because in that regard, we're not building it locally. So there's been a lot of change in the REC rules. SRECs they're called. These are solar RECs. The RECs that are traded for wind, for instance, they have kind of more of a national market, but they're not very valuable right now because there's so much wind being built already. These RECs don't have a lot of value because everybody says I'm building it regardless of REC value.
Are there some businesses that maybe would want to have RECs to be greener to their customers, say maybe car manufacturers or Delta? Disney?
Yeah, and a lot of those are really RECs that are designed by the utilities themselves. A lot of times they're called green RECs or green rate type application. So, for instance, if you created a green rate, you might have in your portfolio. So, for instance, we're looking at solar in our portfolio, which would mean you'd have it in your portfolio.
Right.
So you might say, okay, well, I have so much solar, so I can create a REC program or green rate program that someone would say, although you can't track an electron right to somebody's doorstep, you could say you're part of this solar program because we carve it out and said, and we keep track of it saying, here's how much solar we have. If you want to buy that for your business and be 100% green, then you could say you are. Now, different people look at this different ways. They could, a lot of companies like that because they said, listen, I'm part of that solar facility, but they are fully aware that there's no tie directly from that facility right to them. So solar to doorstep to their doorstep, that doesn't exist, but they understand there's a carve out that said this is specifically for green customers.
And supposedly they could be paying a different rate based on what that production facility costs.
That's right. Yeah, we do a calculation to say what would that rate be versus the other, and that's a moving target as well. So the value of solar, the cost of solar, and the rest of the portfolio. So you just don't give them the benefits of that to say, okay, now that we took that out of the portfolio, how did that affect the rest of the members? So there's a lot of things we can do. I've done that in the past with, and I'm very flexible on trying to create that because I think it's an important thing to corporations to have that ability to have a green rate. And if that's part of their boardroom mandate, then we want to facilitate that and help our members get there somehow. We just got to be careful on the calculations and make sure everybody's treated properly on these things.
Okay.
So do you think there's, I don't know, you don't have a crystal ball, but is there really any likelihood of a qualifying facility popping up, in the next 10 years?
Well, it's been since '78. We haven't had any yet, so I'd say it's probably not very likely. Yeah.
And under what circumstances would the PERPA responsibility flow back to to FPB?
Well, if you weren't part of KyMEA, then of course it would always flow back to you.
So it's
right?
tied to the interlocal or it's tied to the AR?
It would be tied to the AR because it's so the non-AR members don't have this issue because we don't have, it's our portfolio, so we don't have an avoided cost calculation for a non-AR. So if you're transmission only, you wouldn't have a avoided cost calculation from us. Thanks.
And one other question on why the resolution format? Why not just a simple contract that says something?
I'm going to defer to an attorney on that. Charlie Messon's here.
Oh.
It's a very simple answer. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission requires the resolution.
Oh, they do?
Yes, so that they can see that the local agency actually asked for the waiver. But that's reasonable.
Okay, so is the waiver format, the whole contract, is that written by FERC? The resolution?
What the resolution does is it asks, or it says that this agency wants to go on record asking KyMEA to take on the responsibility of buying power from these qualifying facilities located in Frankfort. That's one request. When they pass that, when you all pass that request on to KyMEA, you're also passing on the responsibility that KyMEA will sell power to that qualifying facility. KyMEA is not in the retail business, so you're asking for a second waiver, and that is where actually KyMEA is asking for a second waiver, saying we don't want to sell the power to the qualifying agency, to the qualifying facility. We would like Frankfort to continue to do that. And so what you're doing is just basically passing a portion of your responsibility to KyMEA. KyMEA is passing back a portion to you that you would normally do.
Thank you.
And the resolution is a requirement. We have to send that to FERC to show that you actually are requesting the rate waiver. KyMEA cannot file the waiver without you actually requesting it to do so.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you. Wow, that's almost as long as the resolution. Well, it's an involved statement. Any other questions?
Okay. If there's nothing on that, two other items then. Did want to touch quickly on last month we presented, I guess it was over on that side of the room, but indicative rates, and let's reinforce those again. So based on KU's rate right now and the rates that we've calculated, it looks like about a 14% savings on where you are versus where KU's at right now. So great news. Obviously, we'll know more as we start to get closer and closer to the delivery date, but great decision on the Frankfort's behalf of putting all this together. It's working out exactly as you would have thought it would have. So the ability for members to come together, economies of scale, and move forward as a group is just has been well received. The other one is the SEPA proposal. The only thing I wanted to mention there is we did send out a letter saying we'd like you to decide by April 1st, and this is your decision, but we'd like you to decide by April 1st because there is a transmission clock that kind of ends and has to start again with a request to KU, and they might have to have money for a study or whatever that would be. So we want to make sure we keep our transmission capability of getting that SEPA power. And Brown Thornton came and presented it much better than I know it, obviously, last month. But the savings that Brown projected for a 10-year period is $5.5 to $6.5 million over that time period of a net benefit, not savings, sorry, net benefit to Frankfort. So there's a nice benefit to being part of the SEPA group. I showed that graphic before. Everyone else is already committed to it, and it's your call.
That's just the SEPA.
That's just the SEPA, yeah. Yeah, the SEPA part's $5.5 to $6.5 million in net benefits to you. And it's only because of the capacity. You can monetize the capacity value that you can't monetize now. The energy is still the energy, and we'd sell that into the market similar to what you're doing now. We hope we can optimize it better than as a group, as part of our portfolio than you're doing now, but that's the idea.
Mm-hmm.
Doug, to be clear, that those savings with KyMEA are in addition to the 14% you were speaking of.
Yeah, over and above. Yep. Correct. Very good. Thanks, Matt.
And just out of curiosity, OMU, which is not an all requirements member, are they combining in their SEPA allotment? or-
No.
Okay.
So we don't deliver to them, so they're their own, so this is only for the all requirements
I
members.
see, okay.
Why do you suppose that is? Is
I realize they don't have any cost to avoid, but would there not still be a remuneration based on the avoided cost to the other members there? Is it more economic for them to keep it the way it is, or
Oh,
can you help
for-
us some with why they decided to?
Oh, sure. So they're their own power supply. So
Yeah, I understand.
they have generation and everything else. So they're similar to what we are. So they're delivering to their own customers and selling to the market. So there's no need for them at this point in time to combine any all requirements with us. Now, any benefit they would have with us would be joint savings in a number of other areas. So we could have a joint dispatch of somehow or share the cost of a number of things. And that's why they're a member, because they see the economies of scale. But for right now, they have their own portfolio supply that's different than the supply that we put together for the all requirements.
So are they just taking, and I know you're not with OMU, but are they just taking the SEPA to load, or how are they?
I'm not sure I'm not privy to what they're doing with it, so.
And back to rates a little bit. So there's that 14% there, but you look at OMU's retail rates and extrapolate from there where that is. It looks like they're approaching 30% lower than us. Do you have some sense of what that gap could be? Off the top of my head, it would seem that they don't have necessarily the same transmission costs that we would, but is there some money we're leaving on the table there between what we're getting from our sources and what OMU is able to?
Yeah, I guess I'm not aware what their rate structure is. I didn't know they were 30%.
Did you say
26 or something?
They're not 26% with their true rate. I think what
and I don't know, these are just retail rates are on their website.
Right, they're retail rates, but they don't pick up their power cost adjustment and some other things that go into the rate. So they are actually more expensive than we are when you get to a true rate.
Oh, really? Okay.
I don't have it right in front of me, but I can get it to you
I'd like
tomorrow.
to see it.
We have, I don't
I saw a
exactly
similar
remember.
discrepancy with Madisonville, which made no sense at all.
Yeah, that's a lot of the municipals. They have a power cost adjustment that has gotten fairly high compared to ours. Is basically a pass through, but theirs has incorporated other things. So you have to be careful. And it's the same thing when you look at the PSC's website with other utilities, KU and stuff. You miss a lot of add-on rates that get stuck on there. So when you get to that final true rate, we do have a comparison of that. It may still be on our website, but if not, I'll get it for you.
No, that's a good point. When people look at base rates versus the power cost adjustment.
Yeah, and I knew everything went in there, but I didn't know where that delta was.
So there's a all-in. But I can assure you that the rates that you have, especially when they drop 14% below, are the envy of the nation in many places. These are very good rates that you have here. Should really help with economic development, attraction, and all kinds of things, because these are very good rates.
Are there? I noticed in the presentation you gave at the meeting, it's your last KyMEA regular meeting, there were a list of assumptions there. Were there some of those assumptions that you feel like are a greater risk to that, to the veracity of that rate?
Well, we were conservative. So I think we're hoping we can do better, but you just don't know. There's also assumptions on the other side of what the tax law change. Kentucky utilities, to be better than them, it gets a little bit tougher, and we'll still better, but they're obviously not going to pay as much in taxes as they did last year. So there's that piece of it. But we're very confident we're going to beat their rate by a good 10%, 14% yet. So.
One last one for you. So around the transmission study discussion with SEPA, there wouldn't be a need for another transmission study unless we actually decided not to transfer the SEPA to KyMEA.
That's right, correct.
We would have to actually do it somewhere else. So right. It's not about a timing. It's only if we just chose not to go with KyMEA, right?
Yeah, well, so you have transmission in place right now, so everything's okay right now. Yeah, this is about the transmission study and these transmission studies are, you sometimes scratch your head, so why have to do a study? Because it's still the same power flow in the same place, but that's the requirements of the transmission providers. So it's delicate, and I guess I'd urge you guys to really consider this. This is a lot of money and I know you want to look at things carefully, and I appreciate that, but this is a lot of money that you could potentially be leaving on the table. So.
I looked at those rates really quickly. OMU is approximately 35% more expensive than we are.
Okay, cool. Is there a spreadsheet you can send me?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
like to see us continue to make some progress and build on everything that's been done by Plant Board and our sister cities and our consultants. And at least tonight, I would like to move that we approve a resolution adopting KyMEA Joint PERPA Implementation Plan and authorizing the filing of a request with the FERC for approval to implement such plan.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion. This is to go ahead and approve the PERPA waiver.
I guess I'm not quite there yet. I don't know if there's a lot there left, but I would at least like to have James to have a chance to read it and give us a recommendation on the resolution. We've got 60 days, so I think that's at least prudent to have some sense of what his thoughts are on that.
Board directs me to do that, I certainly will.
Okay. Okay, are we ready for the question? Any other discussion? Don, you look like you might be about to say something.
Well, I mean, hasn't James already had access to the contract, to the resolution?
We spoke this afternoon, and he just got it right before the meeting.
I had it, I don't know when it came out. I didn't read it immediately when it came out.
Yeah, I think it was December 9th. We got the email, so it's been around December 9th time frame or something like that.
December or January?
I thought it just came out a week or so.
I'm still wanting to go back to Christmas, I'm sorry.
Oh,
It's
I don't know.
February.
Okay. Oh, February 9th.
Yeah.
But we also just have the excellent presentation from Doug to filter into reading that contract and understanding it. So, but we have a motion and a second, so I think maybe we should call this by member. Kathy?
Mr. Baldwin?
No.
Ms. Hale?
Yes.
Mr. Ludwig?
Yes.
Ms. Rosen?
No. So, the motion failed, and I think definitely we should have time to look at it and have a decision by the next meeting, which was well within the time frame, and satisfy that question. Oh, what do I do? Oh, water distribution?
Clarification question, please.
Sure.
Did you all reject the resolution and say that you're not going to join the PERPA plan? Because if so, we need to advise.
No, we said we wanted to look at it more carefully.
Well, I think the motion was to approve the plan, and you all voted it, did nothing on it. Is it a motion to table to the next meeting? I need to report back to the board.
Oh, okay.
I make a motion to table it to the next meeting.
I second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, Charlotte.
So, yes, thank you for clarifying that, but we are tabling it until the next meeting, which, in that time, James Liebman will look it over, and we'll think about everything Doug said. But we have not rejected it, we just delayed it. Okay, so what were you suggesting I do?
Just the next
Number 12? This is 13, I think. Okay.
I think we're back to departments again. I think we
Well,
stopped midway down the
Well,
department.
we are. We
line.
have
I
the
think we're
water
around water distribution or somewhere in there.
We'll just do this.
There he is.
And tell me what you'd like to go to.
This is Chairman, members of the board. The water distribution report's on page 119 through 121. We had 11 main breaks and 7 outages. And of course, most of those main breaks were in that one weekend, so. Does anybody have any questions? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Alan. And water treatment plant, Julie Rooney.
Good evening. You're going to bring the graph up, Kathy, please. So for January, the water treatment plant treated 273.6 million gallons of water, which equated to 8.8 million gallons of water a day. So you can see we're ahead for January based on our 2 comparison years. January kind of continued the low rainfall, if you can believe that. We only had 2 inches of rainfall in January. So the river averaged 4,500 CFS, roughly 2.9 billion gallons of water every day passing our intake. To give you some kind of perspective, anybody who's crossed the Kentucky River in the last week has noticed there's been an increase in flow, increase in level, and most definitely an increase in turbidity. As of today, we've had 4.4 inches of rain in February here locally. 3 more predicted by the end of the weekend. So that means we've gone from roughly the average of 2.9 billion gallons passing to more than 18, upwards to 20 billion gallons of water passing that intake every day. If you go down to Jim's Seafood and take a look at the lock, you will see no lock and no dam because the river is so high, it's got it submerged. And I did want to give a shout out. I did this with my last operator that passed his test, but I now have a new 4th class operator as of today. Mr. Clayton Getz was approved by the board and has taken his test. Happy to have that young man on board too. So, any questions?
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a request to go to item number 12. Consider approval of P Ridge easement access agreement. Hans Price to discuss.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Mr. Klein, Jim Klein, who is with us this evening, is in the process of refinancing his property and is working on a VA loan. His bank requires an access easement maintenance agreement. We have an agreement. It was just never recorded. The document that is in your board package contains the same terms and conditions as that 2008 agreement. And in fact, it's a little better. There's an additional party that's going to be using that access way. So after 2028, we'll only be responsible for 1/3 the cost of maintaining that right of way instead of 1/2 the cost. Staff, the operations folks, and I've looked at it and recommend approval of the agreement. And if Mr. Klein has anything to add, well, I'll let him speak if he chooses to.
I've been out
If you use the microphone, it'd be great.
Sure. I've lived out there for about 15 years altogether and been working on a handshake agreement basically. And we had an agreement to blacktop that, and I saved the plant board a lot of money by doing that, where they were having to put gravel on every year, and they would have had to bring people out with graders and everything else. That I have farm equipment there, so whenever a hole showed up, I took care of it. There was no expense to the plant board because I use it too. You know, I use the road. And whenever we get snow, if it's more than an inch, I scrape it. Y'all don't normally come out too much when there's a heavy snow, but it's scraped anyway. And this, the agreement on the blacktop was expired in 2028, and we are reverting it, and we would have reverted all back to you, but because we use the road, my son-in-law and daughter and myself, we used the road too, so we felt some obligation there. And so now I've agreed we share the cost of it after that point. We've also got an electric gate there, which y'all needed a gate. I didn't need one. And we shared on the cost of installing it, but we have had to replace the actuating arm and the works there. We just did it. You don't even know about it. I'm a good neighbor with it. And we try to take care of the road and everything, and I'd appreciate y'all's approval of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. So,
We ready for a motion?
yes.
Okay, I make a motion that we approve the P Ridge easement access agreement.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Ralph. Any further discussion?
I guess I'm going to abstain. I'm sure it's fine, but I don't have any of this in my board packet.
I know
so
I
I'm not
read
sure.
it. Do you know where it is, Kathy?
Yeah, there was an email sent out on 3:50 on Friday, kind of updating on this issue. We've worked really hard with Mr. Klein to get this stuff incorporated into this meeting so he can move on with his refinancing.
Like I said, I'm sure it's fine, but I just don't have it. So.
Sure. It's also on the eMeetings website too, so apologize that you don't have it in your packet.
Well, I thought I read about it, but maybe I read it from the internet.
Sure.
It's on video.
Basically, it just puts it in writing an agreement.
I understand, yeah.
That we just had handshakes on. You're going to experience that with your other water towers if
the property, if somebody owns the property around that and is y'all are accessing through the property, it's not only it has just been a VA loan, which did that, but an FHA loan, all loans are gonna be requiring a written maintenance agreement. They won't know who's taking care of the easement.
And I'm sure it's fine. It's like I said, I'm going to abstain, but I think it's.
So we have a motion from Don. All in favor? Aye. And one abstention. Okay. And I know I read it, but I can't remember where. Okay, our next item is consider the plan amendment to the FPB frozen pension plan. And this, I believe, affects 5 retired employees. Is that correct?
I'm sorry?
This plan that we're talking about affects the 5 retired employees?
5 former employees. In March of 2017, the board approved an amendment to FPB's frozen retirement plan to terminate the plan effective March 31st, 2017, and directed staff to purchase annuity contracts for the 5 remaining participants to provide a lifetime benefit. There are 5 participants. 3 are in payment status. They're retired, and 2 will be eligible for benefits in the future. But unfortunately, due to the small number of participants, we've not been successful in purchasing annuity contracts. We have consulted with Sharon Mattingly with Stoll, Keenan, Ogden, who's been advising us to prepare for plan termination. She suggests that FPB amend the plan to allow for lump sum distributions. The amendment will allow FPB to either purchase individual annuities or distribute funds to participants by a lump sum, which can be rolled over to a qualified plan, such as an IRA. Once distribution to plan participants is completed, excess plan assets will revert to FPB. If approved, the retirement committee will select a company to purchase individual annuities and/or arrange for lump sum distribution to the plan members. Staff will notify plan members of benefit distribution arrangements and options. Kathy has provided board members with a draft amendment prepared by Sharon Mattingly. If this is adopted, she suggests the minutes should approve the adoption of an amendment substantially similar to the one provided. Be happy to try to answer any questions you have.
Now, I know there's a committee that works on these, this separation policy, and that Ralph is on that committee?
Yes.
And did you check in, or were you able to check in with the committee as to whether they thought this was a good solution or where it stands?
Yes, I did by email. Last week, I forwarded all of the information that I've received from the insurance companies regarding annuities, and also from Sharon Mattingly on her comments and her advice, and asked the members to comment, and they said they agreed that this is how we should proceed.
Okay. So
you've looked at it and you're good, Ralph?
I'm good with it. This has dragged on for quite some time. I know Diane's been frustrated with it because it's turned out to be more complicated than we thought it would be. But we do need to get this subject of this old retirement plan closed. And this appears to be the only avenue we've got to do it. So
okay.
I think we should act on the attorney's recommendation that we pass this resolution.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Do we have the proposed resolution?
Yes, I think Kathy had passed it out just earlier. I didn't get it until like 4:30 today, so.
Oh, I see it.
This resolution outlines where we are down to today with this retirement plan. And so they're asking us to amend our plan this way, that section 1110 be amended. I hate to read this whole thing, but it's notwithstanding any other provision herein contained, upon termination of the plan, a member may elect to receive his or her remaining accrued benefit in the plan in the form of a lump sum payment. If the employer is unable, after reasonable efforts, to obtain an annuity contract upon the plan termination, payment to the members shall be made in the form of a lump sum payment. The actuarial equivalency of some said lump sum payment shall be calculated using the actuarial assumptions of the plan, or the actuarial assumptions set forth in the IRS Code 417E, whichever results in a larger benefit to the said member. So this resolution is necessary to move forward with this.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, there are, I believe, 2 participants that we will be unable to purchase annuities for. So unless we can distribute lump sum, we can't distribute. If we don't distribute, we can't close the plan. Or yeah.
Okay, well, I move that we adopt the amendment number 4 to our retirement plan.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Okay. Number 8, consider approval for repair of one Peerless 27.
It's number 7.
7.
Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I have the old version, but I think we're in agreement that it's the vertical turbine raw water pump for the water treatment plant, a total of $47,318.
Consider approving new accounting policy for obsolete inventory.
Oh, you're right, I jumped. Okay, forget that. Number 7, consider approving new accounting policy for obsolete inventory.
We've got a couple copies of these things up here.
Yeah, and plus
I'm teasing. During last year's fiscal or financial statement audit, we had new auditors, Crowe Horwath, and every time you get new auditors, they make more suggestions, which we welcome because we always want to improve things. And one of the things they recommended was that we adopt and implement an obsolete inventory policy. We've developed a proposal for the policy, and it's in your board package. I can read it if you'd like. It's short, but one of the things I wanted to reiterate, though, is, in practice, we've been doing this. We just haven't had an official policy. The only other thing is this policy we will be setting up an obsolete inventory reserve on our books, and that is something we have not done in practice. So we will be formally reviewing our inventory every year. That's what it states in the policy. And then identifying at-risk inventory that hasn't moved in 5 years is what the policy states, and then setting up a reserve on our books to actually record that. So if you...
By setting up a reserve, that means you're putting money into one section?
That means we'll be recording an expense to each of the divisions and then setting up, it's called a contra asset account, so it's just reduces the value of your inventory on the balance sheet and then records the offsetting expense.
It's a non-cash, just a
Correct.
book entry, right?
Correct. The actual recording of the obsolete reserve is non-cash, but when you actually write it off or physically remove the inventory, then it obviously is.
And again, the auditors are asking us to adopt the policy.
Yes. Just to formalize it. Like I
Okay.
said, we've pretty much been doing it anyway.
Okay.
Just to make it official.
Okay.
In the packet, there is a policy. I'm reading it as a suggested policy.
Correct.
Is that right?
And I don't mind if you want me to read it.
We
I'll
could
be happy
adopt
to.
this with reference to the policy.
Correct.
Yeah, I move that we adopt a policy on an inventory policy as it has been provided in the packets. It's one fairly long paragraph. And then, yes, well, actually, it's 2 paragraphs. Second paragraph relates to how the first paragraph will be implemented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Okay, now,
we can get to. Consider approval of repair of the Peerless 27 mega amp, I'm not sure, 3-stage vertical turbine, raw water pump for the water treatment plant, total of $47,318.
All right, the first thing I want to draw your attention to is I made a mistake. This is not a 3-stage pump that we have at our Peerless repair facility. So it is one Peerless 26 HXB 4-stage pump. We have 2 3-stages and 2 4-stage pumps down at the low service building, and so sometimes those get a little confused. The water treatment plant raw water pump station consists of 3 Peerless vertical turbine pumps. These pumps pull water from the Kentucky River and move it up into the plant for treatment. In December, one of the raw water pumps, number 3, was removed from service and transported to the manufacturer's repair facility in Cleveland, Ohio. FPB has authorized the disassembly of the pump for inspection, non-destructive testing, excuse me, of the components, and a development of a scope of work for any repair or rehabilitation. Water treatment plant staff budgeted $100,000 in the fiscal year 2018 budget for any type of pump inspection and repairs. The repair work will be done through S&K Equipment, who is FPB's authorized Peerless pump representative. So we are asking that you consider approval of this repair for this vertical turbine pump in the amount of $47,318.
I move we approve the item per Julie's corrections to the specification of the pump.
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Okay, consider award of bid invitation 1650 water treatment plant service pump station valve replacement project to Herrick Company for $167,600.
Over the past few years, the water treatment plant people have been having problems with some existing pump control valves. In August of 2017, this board approved an agreement with GRW to perform engineering-related services to replace those valves. Invitations to bid were publicly issued in December, and in January we received 2 bids. The low bidder was Herrick at $167,600. The second lowest bidder was $234,000. Treatment department budgeted $248,000 in this year's budget for engineering and construction. Herrick has done a lot of work in the past for us. They're a great contractor. Staff recommends that we award the bid to Herrick in the amount of $167,600.
I move we award bid invitation number 1650 to Herrick Company for $167,600.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Any discussion?
This one by the big variance in the 2 quotes here. Gosh. But we've had lots of experience with Herrick Company.
Herrick's done a lot of work for us.
Let's call for the result.
Okay, oh, good. We had discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Let's see.
And they're in Lawrenceburg, so that might be some of the concept.
Oh, well, that's good. Convenient. Okay. Consider award bid invitation 1651 for a 25,000 kilovolt pad-mounted transformer to Brownstone Electric Supply Company in the amount of $36,299.
Yes, board, the staff prepared a bid invitation for a 2,500 kVA pad mount transformer. We sent it to 9 vendors. We had 5 responses. After reviewing the bids, we recommend awarding to Brownstown Electric Supply Company. They were the lowest bidder, meeting specifications, but they were the lowest bidder. The transformer is going to be used as an on-site emergency backup for an industrial customer. And due to our tariffs, if someone wants something that's strictly for their benefit like this, then they pay in advance for that. So the industrial customer has prepaid, so we recommend approval.
I move we award bid invitation 1651 for a 2,500 kVA pad-mounted transformer to Brownstone Electric Company in the amount of $36,299.
I'll second.
Okay. So we have a motion and second. Any discussion or maybe time for the vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried, or I should say, no one questioned it. Okay. Consider approving increasing rate for retransmission surcharge, increasing rate for bulk cable 1 and 2, and increasing amount of the multi-service discount. I thought we'd go through that individually and vote as we discuss it.
Staff recommends approval of the proposed rate increases and discount increases effective March 1st, 2018. The rate increases are proposed in order to keep pace with increases in the retransmission fees FPB must pay local broadcasters. If approved, the retrans surcharge would increase from $12.03 per month to $16.39 per month effective March 1st, to $18 effective January 1st, 2019, and to $19.98 effective January 1st, 2020. Bulk Cable 1 rate would increase from $11.80 per outlet per month to $12.46 per outlet per month, and Bulk Cable 2 would increase from $20.57 per outlet per month to $21.73 per outlet per month to help offset the increase in retrans surcharge. To help offset this increase, staff proposes to increase the amount of multi-service discounts. The 2-service discount is proposed to increase from $3 per month to $6 per month, and the 3-service discount is proposed to increase from $6 per month to $12 per month. Customers who subscribe to high-speed internet and either cable TV or local phone are eligible for the 2-service discount, and customers who subscribe to high-speed internet, cable TV, and local phone are eligible for the 3-service discount. On December 29th, 2017, the board approved the public meeting notice. That hearing was conducted on January 16, 2017. I'm happy to answer any questions about this item.
Have we received any further comments from the public?
Just Mr. Rosen who spoke at the meeting. I haven't received any electronic or.
And I believe January 1st, it went into effect that we're no longer carrying certain stations.
WAVE, effective January 1st, is no longer on the channel lineup. So
Okay.
that was channel 3 and 503. That's the only one that was not.
Okay. And do we know if anyone called in and said what happened, or?
I think I don't want to speak for customer service. I know that I saw a couple emails come across, just asking where they were, or,
Adam
was
is
it going to come back
smiling,
on?
so did you
He
talk
may
to
have
some
gotten a few
people?
extra calls than I did.
Is that like hundreds, or?
No, 2 or 3 very animated calls.
I see.
2 or 3 animated calls. So.
Okay. Then I think we should go ahead and make motions and vote on these different segments. The first 2, I think, are pretty clear. And then proceed with the discussion on the third one. So is there a motion for increasing rate for transmission surcharge? And I guess we could group that with increasing rate for bulk cable 1 and 2.
I'll make the motion. Make the motion that we approve increasing rate for retransmission surcharge and increasing the rate for bulk cable 1 and 2.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on those 2 items? Okay. Looks like that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, no opposed, so that carried. Increasing amounts for the multi-service discounts. I know that Harvey has gone through different iterations of what we have now with the $3 and $6 discount and what we could go to for the $6, $12 discount, that it could be split between a discount for everyone and some incentive. Any thoughts on that? Oh, and then we also looked into possibly including security and medical alert. So we have the full range of questions here.
Okay, I'll bite first. So I guess, my thought on it is, I definitely think we should, do what we can to lower the rates for the customers, but I don't know if I have enough information here to know if we're choosing the most effective way to do that, if we have those most effective ways in front of us. I guess I'd like to see some more data on the value of the the double play, triple play, and that rebate associated with that, and then and maybe even that blended with just an across the board reduction for the folks that maybe wouldn't benefit from the double play, triple play. But I guess out of that, my bigger comment is I'd like to see some efficacy data around, the value of offering a discount and retention and that type of thing, to have some sense of how that impacts our overall financial position.
Like historical data here in Frankfort on like churn rate for multi-service customers versus single service customers.
I guess whatever we think is effective to demonstrate, how well those discounts work for retention, and if we're going to actually increase retention by increasing those rates, that type of thing.
Okay.
Whether it's local or whether it's national data, or maybe NCTC has data like that.
Right. No, I mean I could look into that. I certainly, anecdotally, industry-wide, double play, triple play is a stickier product. It creates less churn for customers. The more services you have, the less likely you are to go to a different provider. And so I don't have those numbers to put up, but just speaking.
And maybe some data on, where people put that number. Are they closer to the $3 number for the reduction for the double, or are they closer to the $6 number? Just some sense of what kind of value the industry gets out of those kinds of discounts.
Okay. I would say generally that our discounts are significantly lower than across the industry. Other operators have deeper discounts for double and triple play, but it's just speaking from, the fact that we haven't touched it in as long as we have. But yeah, I'm absolutely get that information for you.
I guess that would be my thought, as we save this for next month, we get a little more data on what the value is there, and maybe get a more higher level view of what the economic impact is to the whole agency and the benefit for the customers.
And maybe you said at some point, Harvey, but the $3, $6 discount, how long have we been doing that?
I had that on my, we've been doing this for 2 months, and then that was on one of my previous iterations.
Oh,
but it's at least 10 years, I think. Since we started offering internet, which was 2005, earlier, 2001. Yeah, these have been the discounts since we started offering internet. So yeah, 16 years.
Okay, so for quite a while.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So, do we have a motion then?
I just want to table this till next month.
To table something, do we need a motion?
You need a motion if that's the
If we
intention.
plan to table it.
I guess I would make a motion that we table until next month and give staff some time to pull some industry data together to give us some sense of the value of the discounts.
Okay. I'll second that. Any further discussion? All in favor of tabling this until March?
Aye.
Aye. So a motion passed unanimously. Thank you, Harvey.
Thanks.
Okay. Oops, lost track. Our next item is new and old business. I think we covered the one item that was new and old business.
I have some things I'd like to discuss.
Okay.
If anybody else wants to go first, that's fine. If anybody else has
I
something.
think you're up.
Okay. I'd like to talk about the Reed Smith contract. I'm really disappointed that when Mr. Sauer asked the question, he wasn't answered. We've received the final Reed Smith report, and we received it, again, just the board. I have a problem with that. I would like to know, Mr. Liebman, what legal precedent is there in attorney-client privilege being used to keep management from having access to the report?
Well, I'm sorry, did
Go
you
ahead.
finish your question? Okay. First part of that, and no offense to Mr. Sauer, my understanding was that the public comment period was for public comments, and also knew that this question was going to come up, so that certainly the board was all aware of the answer, and the answer is that we do have the board has the final report from Reed Smith. It's clearly covered by attorney-client privilege. the earlier comment was accurate, the board can choose to waive that privilege. That's purely a decision of this board to make. And all I've done at this point is preserve the legal rights of this board to make that decision.
I don't understand why we're making a division between the board and management. We're all one organization. We're supposed to be working together. And to me, when you have the board getting information like we have with Reed Smith and the draft E3 report that we received on Wednesday, only going to the board and not going to staff, it sets up an adversarial relationship between the board and management. And that's not, in my opinion, a good way to run an organization. We're all one organization. And how can they do their job if they don't have the same information that we have? And how can we do our jobs as board members when, because it's attorney-client privilege, we can't discuss it with Vent or Hans or Mr. Mooson or any of the people that the plant board has relied on for decades for information? To me, the report then becomes useless. We're not discussing it in public amongst ourselves. The management doesn't have it. The public certainly doesn't have it. And we have no way of assessing what we got from Reed Smith and how KyMEA feels about what they have said. I know there's one thing wrong or inaccurate in the Reed Smith report because I was able to check it out. So if there's one thing inaccurate that it was easy to check, the things dealing with the contract that aren't so easy to check, I have no way of knowing because I can't talk to anybody about it. And I just think that we're making a really big mistake by handling it the way we're handling it.
There's definitely an attorney-client box that this is in at the moment, right? And the board can waive that, right?
Board can decide to waive it.
So all we have to do is waive it.
Anytime.
Yeah.
And I certainly, if I can respond, I agree with the first part of what Ms. Hale said. I don't want an adversarial relationship among anybody in this room, and there shouldn't be. But the decisions beyond that point are for the board to make. I don't have a vote on anything.
So all we need is a motion.
Do you have a recommendation
Okay.
as to, what's in the best interest to protect the rights of the ratepayers by maintaining our attorney-client or waiving our attorney-client?
I don't know how you get to the ratepayers on
Well, I guess
that.
in general, it's about the benefit, the interests of the agency, right?
That's a better way to put it.
Okay.
Better way to put it. But I understand what you mean. All of those should certainly, I would recommend, and again, I don't have a vote on anything. I would recommend that all those documents be shared with staff as the board sees fit. And to me, it's a separate question as to whether you entirely waive the privilege and make it a public document. Now, there's a distinction clearly between E3 and Reed Smith.
Mm-hmm.
The earlier E3 documents did become public and obviously are not covered by any kind of attorney-client privilege. So there's a distinction there, clearly. But
So you're saying that we can waive it, sort of?
well, I think you can share it with staff with a direction. If I don't want to be legislating here, but the board, I think, could do that and direct staff not to release it if that's what the board thought was appropriate.
And would that still,
Or you just release it.
would that still retain our privilege there?
I
or
think
there-
it would
Okay.
if you direct that it not go beyond members of the staff. But again,
Well,
those are
basically
options.
that would imply that they wouldn't share it with KyMEA. if it's just you're going to restrict it to staff.
Well,
I want to hear KYMEA's response. I think KYMEA is entitled to respond to this report, and I think for us to be able to make clear decisions, we need to hear their response to this report. We heard their response from the E3 report. I think we need to hear they may agree. They may say, oh gosh, I wish I'd thought of that. We don't know that. We haven't given them the opportunity to see and know what's in here.
Well, having read, we also submitted questions which Reed Smith answered, and one of them very specifically was, should we make this a public report? And they were very cautious about their response and said you could redact it or rewrite it and share the public portions, or what we could consider to be public portions, but that some of the information would be sensitive and would not be something that you necessarily want to share. So that you should think about that very cautiously.
I mean, I guess my thought is that, I guess I have two. One, I understand the interest in the public, and I think, Reed Smith had a good suggestion there to have our board attorney draft, I guess, effectively a redacted version of what was there that didn't waive our privilege, but that it gave, some public sense of what the discussion was. But, overall, I think this is all a piece in the effort to integrate the changes recommended by E3 with, where we are with KyMEA. And I think that, we were in, a really good position with KyMEA last June when E3 and KyMEA got to sit down and discuss the recommendations from E3, and there was a lot of agreement in the room. And, I think working to get back to that point and back to a dialogue with KyMEA to come to some accord on those recommendations is our best path. I think, moving forward, on a legal avenue, I just don't think we're there yet. And I think I'd be concerned about waiving that privilege until we get through the process of trying to get things back to the constructive, positive place that we were last June.
So how are we supposed to get there?
Well, I guess my hope is starting a dialogue with our new CEO of KyMEA, getting back to that point with the discussion with the E3 recommendations, and maybe the way to move forward there is to bring the KyMEA CEO together with E3 and have a short phone conference so they can have some meetings of the minds of the experts, and maybe get back to the agreement that we had in that room, last June. In June, when that report from E3 was presented, we had the KyMEA consultants and the E3 consultants in a room together for 2 days, and there was a lot of agreement. But once we got further down the road, there were no accommodations to any of the agreements that we had inside that room. And so I think there's an opportunity for us to get back to that point, and I would like to see us get back to that point before we move towards any other aggressive actions. I think we've got a nice opportunity with the new CEO coming on board, and let's put a new first foot forward and try to come to some accord. We had that in the past. I think we can get there again.
And to clarify that, Don, you may not be aware, the report from KyMEA to all of the E3 requests, basically they said no to everything.
I disagree with that.
I do too. I also disagree with that statement.
I don't think they said no to everything. Several things, and I didn't bring it tonight because I should have, I guess, but there are several of the points in the response from KyMEA to E3 that say you can already do this. So to say that they didn't respond at all is just not accurate.
They did respond.
Well, but I mean, to say that they aren't accommodating any, off the top of my head, I can't name the points, but there are several times in that report when they say you have requested whatever, and you can already do that in here. And so I don't think it's accurate to say that they have not accommodated anything in the E3 report. when you can already do it, then it's accommodated.
Well, I think a lot of the problem with, that came out of, the discussions with the KYMEA consultants was there were multiple ways that you can interpret a lot of the sections of the contract, particularly the AR, and the language isn't quite as tight as we'd like it to be. And there was a lot of agreement with the Spiegel-McDermott representative that there was some room there that we could tighten up. And you also see that in the responses in the KYMEA July document, where in one place they interpret the contract in one direction, and in another place they interpret the contract in the other direction. And that's something we need to resolve now before we get further down the road.
I just think that the report needs to, at least at a minimum, be available to management.
I think if we don't waive attorney-client, I think that's fine.
But we are delineating that it's to management, not to KYMEA.
Well, that's clearly a waiver.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't have an issue sharing it with senior staff as long as we're not waiving any attorney-client privilege issues. I think that's fine.
I guess one of the problems that I have with the whole attorney-client thing is we're not talking about potential litigation here.
We're not now, and I guess that speaks towards my point. I think we've got an opportunity here to get back to a more constructive conversation, and let's take that. And maybe we revisit the discussion with Reed Smith when we get to some point later where we're thinking about those strategies and the things that Reed Smith is concerned about remaining as attorney-client privilege.
But to me, much of what's in the Reed Smith report has nothing to do with exiting KYMEA. And so...
Well, that was never on the table, so I don't really understand.
Well, it was one of those three things that you were having Reed Smith look at.
Right, and there's discussions in there about the carrying liability. I guess I should...
But how are we waiving attorney-client privilege by asking another attorney's opinion?
Who's the other attorney?
Well, if we asked Tom Trogger or Charlie Musson,
They don't directly represent the plant board.
Okay. Well, can we first I make a motion that the Reed Smith report be given to management staff.
Is this the final report?
The final report, yes.
I guess I think that's fine, but I guess I would ask James to chime in and form that motion in whatever way, or suggest amendments to make that in whatever way we need to make it to make sure we're retaining our attorney-client. And
the only addition would be with direction that it not be shared with anyone outside of Frankfort Plant Board.
And what are we saying?
If the board thinks that's appropriate.
Well,
I guess
it's
we should talk about what senior management means. Or is that Vint and David and Hans?
I'm okay with that. Do you think it needs to be anybody else?
I'm for waiving it, period.
Well, I am too, but I at least want to...
this guy gets his $50,000 when he got that final. He gets it, he's gone. And this report will fade into history. It's just not that big a factor.
Well, no, I think what we're saying is we want to use the information from the report to sit down with people with KYMEA and work out things, get back to where we were when E3 presented the suggestions on how we could improve
We can do
things.
that anytime. We can always meet with KYMEA and talk about any variety of subjects we want. And the organization can make the changes as they need to, but we need to keep moving.
Right, but we aren't forgetting the Reed Smith report. We're utilizing it.
But we aren't really utilizing it if KYMEA doesn't have an opportunity to read it and comment on it.
Well,
and
that didn't work out with E3 though.
That's your opinion. I have a different opinion on that. I think Ralph has a different opinion on that, not to put words in Ralph's mouth, but we need to be able to move on. We need to be able to have the public know what we're doing and that their come May 1, 2019, which is roughly 14 months away, that everything is going to sail smoothly. And when we are still talking about, well, we don't want to waive attorney-client privilege, I think that leaves a connotation in the public's mind, well, they're still planning on doing something there, so what's going on? What is it that they don't want us to see? It's public money. We're a public agency. The public has a right to know what's in this whole 11 pages plus 6 pages of questions and answers. It's the public's money. We have spent over $120,000 thus far of your money, ratepayers, on consultants and attorneys.
Second opinion consultants.
Yeah.
So it is.
You know, so I mean, put 10 attorneys in a room and hand them a contract, and you're going to have 10 different opinions on what that contract says. At some point, it comes back to us at this table. We have the responsibility. We can't keep pawning it off on attorneys and consultants.
Well, I think we have to have expert, commentary, and I think, to put that in context, this is a $500 million contract, and the consulting fees and attorney fees for KyMEA, I think, are upwards of $12 million. So in the scale of things, we've spent a fairly small amount of money on ensuring that, we're making, a prudent decision for the ratepayers.
Well, we talk a lot about transparency, and we talk a lot about due diligence. And for me to do my due diligence, I want to hear from KyMEA. I want to hear what they say. I want to be able to discuss it with them. And I think the public has a right to know what's in here. And so I think, as Ms. Benson Haver said, attorney-client privilege is ours to waive. And I think that I don't see the advantage of keeping this report private.
Well, I guess I defer to, the comment made by, Reed Smith that it's, not in our agency's interest to waive that privilege. And, I would defer to the attorney as to whether that's a wise choice to make.
But what they said was because it was critical of KyMEA, well, duh. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize it was going to be critical. That's what we were asking for, was a critical analysis. That's what they gave us. So they were going to be critical. And I forget the other part of that. So, and they're New Jersey lawyers. They're not Kentucky lawyers. They don't know Kentucky open meetings and open records law. And, it would make, they say, what? It contains sensitive information regarding FPB's rights regarding a termination of its contracts with KyMEA, as well as criticism of the terms of the contracts with KyMEA. Well, I don't think anybody is real shocked about that it might be critical. And as far as regarding termination of its contracts, well, there again, I think, let's talk about it.
I mean, you're saying you're at the point you want to talk about terminating KyMEA?
No, I'm saying let's talk about what they said. Well, let's talk about what's in the report.
I think two things. I think it's inappropriate to read from the report if the board hasn't voted whether or not it's public. But
that was a question and answer, not
Can't remember if we had a motion. Is there a motion?
Is there a motion?
I have Ms. Hill moved that the Reed Smith report be given to staff with direction that it not be shared with anyone outside of senior staff. That's what I have so far.
Has there been a second?
And I guess we listed that staff as Mr. Price, Vitt, and David.
And Hans.
So we want to list Hans Price, Foster.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So there's a motion. Has there been a second?
No, there has not.
Okay. So that would be a limited release, so to speak.
That's right.
I'll bite. I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Perhaps
Yes.
Rosen?
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin?
Yes.
Ms. Hale?
Yes.
Mr. Ludwig?
No, only because I want to waive the attorney-client completely.
That's my next motion. Excuse me?
Sounds like that motion passed.
That's correct. You
Okay.
have it correctly.
Now I'd like to make a motion to waive attorney-client privilege to have the Reed Smith report open to the public.
Well, one option there, which is what Reed Smith recommended, is to do a redacted, rewrite, present the basic elements but not the details type of approach, and I think that that is fair and reasonable. There are details in there that I don't think are good to share, misleading, or however you might want to look at it.
I would agree. I think it's a good idea to have, to ask James to, pull together a summary that doesn't waive our attorney-client, but that gives folks a flavor of what the discussion is. If that's possible, I don't even know. It was a suggestion from Reed Smith, so.
And prepare some type of summary and release that?
That was Reed Smith's comment, to prepare some type of overview. You don't think that's possible?
Sounds like a waiver to me, but I
Okay.
couldn't swear to it.
Well, then, so then what would the discussion be, that maybe you're tasked with that if you could find a facility to do it without waiving? Or you just think it's a bad idea in general?
I'm not sure how you would release, a partial release and preserve a privilege.
Okay.
But, well, when things are issued that are heavily redacted, or are redacted, like power purchase agreements and things like that, they meet that criteria somehow.
I don't know how you'd do it with this type of information. Then you'd have a debate, a paragraph at a time of what stays in and what goes out, and still think it comes out to a waiver
And by waiver, you mean
of the
losing.
privilege.
Okay.
I guess my thought is if that's where we are with it, let's let staff have it. Let's give the board a chance to talk with staff, get some feedback on that, and, see where we are.
Can you explain to me what the benefit is of maintaining attorney-client privilege?
I guess I'm deferring to the two attorneys who've had comment on it, that it's in the agency's interest to maintain that privilege. I'm not an attorney.
I think their reasoning is poor. If we were talking about litigation, I would not be pushing this issue.
Well, I think that the point Reed Smith was trying to make, that if you ever consider litigation, that if you shared this information, you've lost some of your position.
But this report does not say A, B, C, this is what we need to do if we want to, and I don't want to be accused of saying too much about the report, but it doesn't give us direction of what to do if we want to litigate. It speaks in very broad terms of our responsibility as board members of the, of the fiduciary responsibility. It speaks in broad terms of conflicts of interest.
I guess all this is really problematic to me. James, if we were getting a little cart before the horse here, talking about content before we...
You're on a very slippery slope.
I guess,
But I think there's a
there's a motion on the table,
made a
and
motion.
I think, we maybe need to just...
But there could certainly be discussion. Not trying to cut that off.
I guess what I'm trying to say And it makes it difficult to say anything about the report without talking about the report, which, you know.
Well, but now we're in a position where you can discuss it with staff, and we can get a little further with it and see where we are, and we can make an educated choice about how to move forward. Or informed choices, maybe a better way to do it.
I agree with Ralph.
Discussion.
The public has paid for it, the report is done, and the public has a right to see the report.
Okay. So, do we have
a motion to waive attorney-client privilege of the Reed Smith report, but I don't have a second.
Okay, so we have a motion
the
from,
second
that was from Dawn. From Dawn. And do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Any further comments? Discussion? Okay, go ahead and call for the vote.
Mr. Ludwig?
Yes.
Ms. Hale?
Yes.
Mr. Baldwin?
No.
Ms. Rosen?
No.
2-3.
Okay, that motion failed. I had one other discussion item, which was we have the response back from E3 concerning the SEPA allocation. And Michelle Chatt made a number of points and suggested that we have a law firm or lawyer move that into a contract format, our requests. And we could go a couple different ways. I talked to James a little bit about this and asked if he would be able to put these items into the contract with KyMEA concerning SEPA.
I haven't looked at that carefully, but I'm certainly willing to take a look and see if that's feasible.
Okay. And the other option would be to ask Reed Smith, who's very familiar with all the information, to prepare the contract which covers these points that E3 has pointed out. So we have those two possibilities.
And I guess maybe there's a third. James could also work with E3 to make sure that the subject content reflects what's in there. We still have an existing budget with E3, so.
We'll attempt anything the board asks us to do.
Okay. So,
Of course, what you're doing here is you're proposing that we put more steps in between us and our action upon integrating our SEPA capacity and energy with KyMEA, and I don't think we have the luxury of that time.
well, we have until April 1st.
Yeah.
And the only time that we have any, per the discussion earlier, the only time we have any financial issue with that is if we decide to not go with KyMEA at all. And that's not, what these recommendations are. They're all about, tweaking the contract so that it's more advantageous to the ratepayers in Frankfort.
I don't see where their recommendations make it more advantageous to the ratepayers of Frankfort.
Like I said, I'd encourage you to discuss it with Ms. Chait.
If I could add one particular point, one thing to kind of keep in mind, and again, I'm not on KyMEA's board anymore, but we had these discussions when we were forming the agency. All the cities are in it together. If you make a contract that pushes more risk onto KyMEA, you in effect push it onto the other cities. I would be surprised if KyMEA would be willing to have a SEPA contract with you that was different than the other cities. So therefore, if you want to push more risk onto them, my guess is they would probably modify the contract for everyone else, which would push the risk back on you. See what I'm saying? I mean, it's all a risk type of situation. That was the whole part of KyMEA that we're trying to balance in the beginning was, if you push more risk on the organization, you really push it on the other cities, and they have the same rights to push the risk back on their end. So I would just kind of keep that in mind. It's always a give and take. So, at this particular stage in the game, you've had the contract since January or February of last year. I think you're going to have a hard time getting them because they're going to want to change the contract for all the other cities, and they have to know by around April 1st. I'm just trying to give you a little bit of caution. Obviously, it's your decision to make, but I think when April 1st comes, they may just say, well, if you don't sign the contract, I really believe they're going to close that particular door. I don't know for sure, but it does concern me from the monetary savings standpoint for our ratepayers. Just caution. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you.
I think there's also, there's there's certainly shifting risk around, but there's also shifting control around, and there's shifting value around. And those might not be bidirectional between the different agencies, right?
It's going to be hard to explain to our customers why in March we did not act when we've had all this time and I had all this information and all this analysis all down the line, and then we're going to close the door on ourselves and our ratepayers and we're going to lose millions of dollars.
I don't think anybody's talking about closing the door.
That's what will happen.
And surely,
We need to
KYMEA is
act.
not going to choose to be vindictive because we want to understand
need to
where we
act.
are and act on the recommendations we have in front of us. I mean, we have, an internationally recognized firm that made some significant suggestions. And I think we ought to at least get to the point of being able to present those to KYMEA and having some feedback.
Well, once again, even our staff hasn't seen it because it's confidential. And, I'd like for Vent to be able to see what the suggestions are here.
Well, it's confidential, but it's not attorney-client, I don't think.
Well, but you all didn't, when James sent it to the board on Wednesday, he didn't send it to Hans, Vent, and David.
Well, let's send it to Hans and David.
Do we need to make a motion to do that?
I don't know, I mean, there's no attorney-client in there. I mean, it's
No
just confidential.
attorney-client.
It's just like a PPA, right? I
Then
mean,
why wasn't it sent to them to begin
Because
with?
the board did not direct me to do that. Why is that funny?
Well, it's because
I'm
it's
sorry.
ridiculous.
I'm sorry. Well, it's not ridiculous and it's not funny, this whole process, but those are decisions for the board to make.
And keep in mind, the original motion that put all this in forth, in process, was a motion between the board and the board attorney and Reed Smith and E3. So these are board efforts, right?
But since when
Since November of 2016.
has reports that the board has voted on not automatically gone to senior management?
Well, I think, when I first became board chair, I worked on a letter to say that we're both working, the board and staff are working towards the same goal. And that was rejected by Herbie and also was not agreed by David. And so that puts the board in a different category.
No, ma'am, it does not.
Well, I mean, I think regardless, I think we've got an argument about something that's a non-issue, because I don't think anybody has any issue sharing the SEPA data with senior staff.
Okay.
I mean, I guess I'd make a motion that we, share the E3 report with senior staff.
I second that. Any further discussion on that? Okay, we'll call for the vote. All in favor of sharing the E3 report on the SEPA contract with staff?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, all in favor. So we're doing that.
But, I'm sorry.
Okay, so the next question was, how should we proceed? Maybe Hans and James could look it over and see if we could rewrite the contract ourselves, or if we need to go to E3. I'm sorry, go to Reed Smith to make suggestions on the contract, or what we'd like to do.
We've already voted to terminate the contract with Reed Smith. We did that in February, when you handed us the final report.
That's right.
It's only 2,000.
Terminated his contract.
I guess I would make a motion that we direct the board attorney to draft contract changes for KYMEA and pull in Hans and E3 as needed to produce that draft.
I second that. Further discussion?
I think whatever you do, come March, we're going to have to act or not act on this integration arrangement. And there's a lot of money involved. And if we don't do it, we're going to disadvantage our customers severely.
Right. And so we just
So
worked out-
whatever we do, we need to have our act together in March, because it's going to come down to you fish or cut bait. You're going to be yes or no.
That's right. And we're going to ask James and Hans to take a look at the recommendations from E3 and see if we can work out a contract that will be acceptable to KYMEA and cover the E3 suggestions.
So then Frankfort is going to have one contract, and all the other municipalities that have already approved the contract which we've had for over a year, is going to have another contract.
Well,
I think that's kind of fortune telling. We don't know what's going to come out of all this.
Well, if you're incorporating this into a contract, then that means it's different from the contract that we've had for over a year and that the other municipalities have already signed.
Well, I mean, the agency allows for power projects, allows for asymmetric membership, just like OMU is not a member of the AR. It's an emergent effect of the structure of the organization.
But why wouldn't we want KyMEA to handle the SEPA when it can give us?
I don't know that anybody's talking about SEPA, KyMEA not handling SEPA. We've just got some questions about how it's going to be handled.
so I believe we have a motion and a second. Why don't you go ahead and call us, Kathy?
Mr. Ludwig?
No.
Ms. Hale?
No.
Mr. Baldwin?
Yes.
Ms. Rosen?
Yes. Okay. So we proposed a solution for working the E3 suggestions into the contract, and that failed. What would you propose we do?
I propose that we accept the contract that we've had for the last year. Actually, I'll just go ahead and make the motion that we accept the contract that we've had, and I don't know how to word it right. Pitch in there, Ralph. And that we accept the contract to have KyMEA handle the SEPA entitlement. If you can word it better, go
No,
for it.
because it's going to fail tonight, and we will shut the door behind us. So
Okay.
whatever's going to happen is going to happen in March, and people are going to have to defend their votes in March.
Okay.
Well,
Now, what happens between now and March, I don't know.
well, didn't think that having Hans and James look at how to incorporate the E3 suggestions?
I don't mind them looking at it, but I think it's
Okay.
unrealistic to think that KyMEA is going to change things because we have a demand upon them.
It's not a demand. I mean, we're going to present something to them and see what they have to say.
Well, the last time we made 11 suggestions, or I said there were suggestions, you said there were demands, and that wrestled around and everything, so it's not going to go anywhere.
I'll withdraw the motion.
Okay. But you don't want to give it a chance?
Doesn't hurt to look and talk, but I don't want this process to fall apart and we lose this opportunity.
Well, we haven't lost it. We've got,
If we don't do it by April 1, we've lost it. We can do it later, but it's been explained to us by our consultants that we're going to have to pay extra transmission fees later on.
That's not the case.
Also, in the meantime, we won't get the advantages of this.
well,
And as you know, SEPA, from the last couple of years, because of dam repairs and all this, SEPA has been marginal, up and down, low profit, low loss, and that's the way it's going. But now our consultants tell us if we integrate our capacity and our energy into KyMEA, that we will do better.
Well, our consultants are E3.
will do better.
KyMEA's consultants tell us it will do better. Our consultants tell us there's room to work.
Well, I have confidence in our long-term energy expert consultants.
okay.
They've brought us this far and they're sticking with us.
But E3 hasn't said that we won't make what our consultants are telling us. E3 is nitpicking the language of the contract. And there's a difference.
They're pointing out how we could be protected in the future.
Right. And how it might be more economic to us in the future. And I
Now-
think that's, back to the original motion, I think it's in our interest, if it turns out to be a trivial change and nobody has an issue to it, why wouldn't we just put that in front of KyMEA and see where that goes?
And KyMEA, other members may be impressed with the contract changes and want to do the same thing. They may come over to saying, yes, this is good. But until we are able to put something together and present it to them,
I think it's too late in the game to play those games.
well, I don't see it as a game. I see it as a next step, and we've got about 40 days to work it out.
but it's not 40 days for just us to work it out. It's 40 days for all the other municipalities also,
Yes.
because we're changing the contract. If you incorporate these things, you're changing the contract.
True, but the purpose of contracts is to protect the interests of the parties. And if we don't feel like we're protected, then why would we sign a contract?
So how does defining uncontrollable events protect us? You know, it's item number 8. Occurrence
That
of,
would probably be a good thing to discuss with the attorney.
well, I mean, you know, uncontrollable force is not defined. It's defined in the AR contract, but it's not defined in this contract. Defining that, you know, it again, a little bit of common sense sometimes goes a long ways. And uncontrollable force is pretty much, I think, universally defined as tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, you know, those type of events. And so that isn't protecting the ratepayers or us as FPB.
I mean, do you have any comment on that, James, about having ambiguous language in a contract?
There are recommendations as to what E3 feels would make it a stronger contract. I don't know if it would work or not, but it's their report and their recommendations. We didn't write it.
So we have our 2 in-house lawyers take a look at this and make recommendations as to what they think would work in the contract and protect our interests and KyMEA. And I don't see any loss in doing that at this point.
Yeah, I guess I would, resubmit my earlier motion that, we have the board attorney pull in the assets he needs from Hans and from E3 to, turn this into a contract change document we can send to KyMEA for comment.
So that's a motion.
And do it as expeditiously as possible.
I second that. Yeah, well, if you're caught up.
I'll get it off the video.
Okay, good. Okay, go ahead and call the vote, please.
Mr. Ludwig?
No.
Ms. Hale?
Nope.
Mr. Baldwin?
Yes.
Ms. Rosen?
Yes. Okay. So,
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
wait, I think there's still general manager comments is the last thing on the agenda.
I have no comments tonight, thank you.
Okay. Kathy, was there anything else on there? Okay. All in favor?
Well, I think we've got a second first. I'll second it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for seconding.
All in favor?
Aye. Thank you, everyone.